Riverside's history goes back over 100 years when a group of citizens decided that they needed a hospital in Newport News, and was a community effort. There were subscribers. They raised money to have basically a match. There was the Old Dominion Land Company that donated the site, originally down by the shipyard, and so hence the name Riverside and how we got started. Over that time, we have grown, and Riverside started over 100 years ago. It was a community effort. There was a group of citizens who believed there was a need for a hospital in Newport News, and with that, there were subscribers in the community. There were business leaders, the shipyard, Old Dominion Land Company donated the land for the hospital, which was originally down by the shipyard, hence the name Riverside. And in the preceding 100 years, we've now grown. We've established a major medical center here in Newport News. We have become the largest provider of health services on the peninsula. And through that effort, we've also continued to reach out to our community by being active in programs such as An Achievable Dream, the United Way. And it all gets back to the founding roots of Riverside and being an integral part of the Newport News and Greater Peninsula community. Healthcare has always been something that's been important to people, and people like to donate to healthcare causes and to healthcare organizations. In the late 90s, Dr. Price, Rick Pierce, and many others decided that we needed to formalize what we were doing around philanthropic activities, and so the Riverside Foundation came into being. From that, we have continued to not only serve the community by raising money and having people support programs such as hospice, such as some of our building campaigns that aren't covered by insurance, which has also led us to also continue to look at and how do we support programs. Sorry, got a little off track there. So the foundation is important and was started because people like to give to healthcare and like to give to healthcare organizations. So in the late 1990s, there was an effort and was focused on how do we make sure that we have a vehicle that allows people that opportunity. Dr. Price was the first chairman of the Riverside Foundation, and it was an effort to have people. Riverside has always been an important part of the community, and people have always liked to support healthcare causes and healthcare organizations. In the late 1990s, it was determined that we needed to have a vehicle to be able to help people give to Riverside. Dr. McKinley Price, now the mayor of Newport News, was the first chairman of the Riverside Health System Foundation and helped lead the charge to help and make it more of a prominent vehicle for people to support Riverside. In the beginning, we also used the foundation to also help us support causes in the community, and we continue to do that. We now do that through the Riverside Health System. The foundation is critically important to helping us meet our mission of caring for others as we would care for those we love. We've had a lot of great leaders here at Riverside, and a couple of people that come to mind who have been instrumental or who were instrumental in forming of the Riverside Foundation. Rick Pierce was the president of the hospital at the time, of the health system at the time, and he, working with Dr. Price, decided we needed to have the foundation. Jerry Brink was the first foundation president and helped it expand from the late 1990s into the early 2000s. And Caroline Martin was very instrumental in helping us continue to focus on how we raise awareness about the foundation. Caroline was over the college of what is the Riverside College of Health Careers, which is, again, one of the things that people love to support, higher education programs. Caroline was also instrumental in forming the first hospice program in Virginia. And a lot of our donations, a lot of our support in the early days, came from people who wanted to recognize caregivers through the foundation in support of hospice and home health programs. So we've been very fortunate to have leaders who have believed in Riverside, who've believed in the community, and in the late 1990s believed that we needed the foundation to help us be able to be here for another 100 years. The Riverside Foundation could not do what it does without great leadership from our board. And as with all of Riverside, we have outstanding volunteers who make up and are part of the Riverside Health System Foundation Board of Directors. From the start, Dr. McKinley Price, Mayor Price, committed to helping us grow, to making sure that people were aware of the foundation, to help it as we have expanded over the last 20 years. And throughout that time, we've also had people in some of our geographic communities who have just been outstanding in raising the awareness, who've gone above and beyond the call to help us grow and make it a success. I can think of Francis Ellis from the Northern Neck, from the Tappahannock region. Francis also has served as chairman of the Health System Foundation Board. She has been just a go-getter. She loves the foundation, she loves Riverside, and so she has done things, everything from calling on people to having parties to catering parties to developing themes of how we can support the foundation. She was instrumental in the private room campaign up at Tappahannock. Karameen Kellum, Karameen was the president, or was the chairman of the board for the Shore Hospital when it became part of Riverside. And when she rotated off as the chair, she came on to the foundation board. Karameen, again, like Francis, loves Riverside, loves the Eastern Shore community, and understood that by helping support the growth of the foundation, we could make Riverside stronger, which would make the Eastern Shore community stronger. Very instrumental in growing. And our most recent, our current chairman, Conway Shield, Conway is fabulous. He knows everybody in the community. He has been involved in so many different boards and organizations, and he has taken it upon itself, working with our new executive director, Kristen Witt, to call on people to talk about what and how we can grow the foundation. It's just been a blessing to have so many outstanding volunteers, community leaders who have made the foundation their cause. Well, the foundation really became known, I would say, in the late 2000s, and 2008, 2009, when we tried to change, or we changed its focus to more of a fund destination, a gift-giving destination. And we really began to raise the awareness about the foundation. It has continued to serve Riverside and the community. It has helped us with putting in a family care center in Gloucester. It helped us put in the sanctuary, a chapel, a meditation space at the medical center here in Newport News. It has continued to provide cancer patients, hospice patients with transportation, with medications that they might not otherwise be able to afford. It has helped us in the Tappahannock region with programs such as the private rooms, and on the Eastern Shore, the auxiliary, through their work, has donated to the foundation, which has provided much needed equipment on the Eastern Shore. So it has touched everything. It has helped us in our lifelong health organization, as we have tried to care for those in home-like setting as much as possible. Music therapy, the foundation has helped fund that. Caring for mothers who have had stillborn babies. It is unbelievable the work that can be done with the foundation, with the support of the foundation, because healthcare is very much a high-touch, relationship-driven business, and a lot of times the insurance companies want us to just pay for basic care, and we believe there's more to that, more in healthcare than that we have to give back, that we have to support people's emotional as well as physical needs. I would just add, when we talk about the people who have helped the foundation over the last 20 years, you go back to people who have been a part of this community, who have been a part of Riverside going back to the 1960s. I think of people like Jerry Brink, who was the administrator at Riverside Regional for many years and then became the first foundation leader and helped it get started, who helped us bring it to life. Rick Pierce, who had the idea of how do we make it something that is bigger than what it was and how it can help Riverside continue to grow and prosper for the next 100 years. Caroline Martin and her leadership around the college and hospice and home health and some of the creative things that she came up with throughout her career. And finally, I believe, when you think about the volunteers who have helped shepherd the foundation, who have helped it grow, people like Dr. McKinley Price, the first foundation board chairman, all the way through our current board chairman, Conway Shield, who have a passion about this community, and they believe that by helping Riverside be stronger, it will make the community stronger. Riverside has been blessed with great leadership throughout its 100-year history, and one of the people that not only has helped Riverside through her leadership, but now has helped Riverside in the broader community is Golden Bethune-Hill. Golden started at Riverside as a director of nursing, left, came back, became executive vice president and administrator of Riverside Regional Medical Center, has been a force in the community. When Golden retired, she believed that there was a need in the Southeast community for more health care, and so through a partnership with Riverside and the foundation, created the Newport News Free Clinic. She and her husband Charlie have been not only tremendous supporters of that, but have been supporters of the foundation. And it's people like Golden and Charlie who make Riverside better, who make our community better, and the thousands of people that they have helped touch in their working career, as well as now through their volunteer efforts. It goes without saying that Golden has been a real asset to Riverside and to the peninsula. The Newport News Shipbuilding Dry Dock Company has been a part of Riverside since its beginning. They were instrumental in helping us get started as we founded Riverside down by the shipyard in the 1915, 1916 time. They were also instrumental in helping us move to the new location on J. Clyde Morris in the early 1960s. They were instrumental in building a team member campaign for shipyard workers who donated to helping us build the new Riverside Hospital on J. Clyde Morris Boulevard. So tremendous belief and support from the shipyard, which has been a part and has been one of the leading employers in this community for over 105 years. W.M. Jordan has been a staunch supporter of Riverside, helped us build the original facility on J. Clyde Morris Boulevard, has been instrumental in a number of projects throughout the last 50 years. Everything from expansions at the Riverside Regional Medical Center campus to programs and expansion of our lifelong health at Patriots Colony. So we're very, very proud to be a partner and have the support of W.M. Jordan. And I think when you look at the people who have continued to support Riverside throughout the last 20 years in our foundation, a lot of people have had a focus on education and scholarships. Ruby Pope Drum, a graduate of the Riverside College of Health Careers when it was known as the Riverside School of Professional Nursing. She came up through the school, went into the Air Force, had a successful career, and when she passed away, she credited her success to Riverside and the School of Health Careers and made a significant, our largest donation ever to Riverside. So we're incredibly thankful to her and her legacy. Nancy Bates, who got involved with Riverside when we built Riverside Doctors Hospital in Williamsburg. Nancy has been just tremendous in helping us look to ways that we can support nursing and health careers and has endowed a scholarship through our school, through the foundation. Those things touch our hearts because people are making an investment in the future. They're making an investment not only in Riverside, but in the students and those people who will then have very successful careers, who will lead very fulfilling lives. So we continue to believe that is an important aspect of the foundation supporting our college. We need to make sure we thank Debbie Atkinson. Debbie took over as the executive director after Jerry Brink retired. And Debbie was the first to help us as we transition more from a gift giving to a gift receiving organization at the foundation, and did a tremendous job. Debbie has been instrumental in helping us look at ways that we could strengthen. She's been very supportive of Kristen as Kristen has come into this role. There's so many people, many of them here tonight, many of them being recognized tonight, who have made Riverside a great place to work, a great organization for this community, and who have helped the foundation be a part of Riverside's success.
Chris wasn't even here for that. That was amazing.
One of the hallmarks of Riverside's success has been our physicians, our medical staff, our advanced practice providers, who not only contribute to caring for our patients and our residents, but who have also been very generous in their support of programs, who've been supportive of scholarships in terms of how they can make care better, they can provide services that go beyond just the great care that they provide. Riverside also would not be as successful as we've been without the volunteers who have supported Riverside throughout all of our facilities, throughout all of our divisions. We've talked about the auxiliary at Shore. We've had volunteers who have been very important to us in all of our hospitals, Gloucester, Doctors Hospital in Williamsburg, who have been generous not only with their time volunteering, but then who have also made contributions, financial contributions, to the success of the foundation.
So one of the areas that Rick Pierce had a tremendous impact on the foundation was being the visionary for the Help Fund, which has had a great impact on numerous employees at Riverside Health System over the years. Part of his vision for that started when he found some papers that were in a ditch after a car accident, and those papers reflected some of the extreme interest rates related to payday lending that go on in our community. As a result of that, part of his vision was this Help Fund that's had a tremendous impact on employees here at Riverside.
Okay.
How's that?
Great. Mr. Bryant?
So for him, I'll probably just comment about his community commitment over the years and
How natural an evolution it was.
for him to transition.
Even when you, as a bright-eyed young intern, what do you call it, administrative resident, came into the world.
I was just a mere extern.
Even when you was a mere expert. You can see the immediate connection.
Jerry Brink had a wonderful impact and wonderful career at Riverside and has a long-lasting legacy here in the Hampton Roads community, serving as long-time administrator at Riverside Regional Medical Center. He was known as Mr. Riverside and had a deep commitment and involvement in multiple activities in the community, ranging from the United Way to the Achievable Dream to Rotary. So it was a natural progression for him in his career and his commitment to the community and Riverside for him to take a first leadership executive role within the Riverside Health System Foundation and setting the tone for the next 20 years and for many more in the future. Riverside has had a deep community commitment to the Williamsburg region long before we had Doctors Hospital there. We had a presence with the surgery center and the diagnostic center in Williamsburg, as well as originally a partnership with Williamsburg Community Hospital for the Williamsburg Radiation Therapy Center that eventually Riverside became the full owner of that joint venture. So we've had a long history of physician presence, treating residents there for cancer services, providing important surgical services, diagnostic services in that community long before we had Doctors Hospital. That addition of the facility was really an expansion of our already deep commitment to the residents of that community. And it was a long fought process. It took us about 5 years to win state approval for that facility there. And our commitment to that community is reflective of our commitment during that long process to get approval of that facility. And we've been delighted to bring that service to the community there. Another important facility that we have in the Williamsburg market is Patriots Colony, and it's a very unique facility, CCRC, that serves retired military officers and government service employees. And it's a very unique model and serves an important niche in the Williamsburg community. In addition, Dr. Mark Ellis had a long history within the Williamsburg community, a tremendous reputation in terms of his patient interactions and contacts and his skilled clinical skills as well in treating cancer. And so he had a great impact related to the founding of Peninsula Cancer Institute, which has now over the last several decades, last decade or so, had a great impact on cancer treatment. That was kind of rambling. Riverside Shore Memorial Hospital plays an important role within Riverside and on the Eastern Shore of Virginia. So it's a sole community hospital that serves an important need to the residents of the Eastern Shore. It became part of the Riverside family in 2009 after Riverside successfully participated in an RFP process in which other systems in Eastern Virginia also competed for that facility. And we were delighted to bring Riverside Shore Memorial Hospital into the Riverside family. Over that time, we've built a first-class facility over on the Eastern Shore, and it provides excellent services to the citizens over there. When we first became affiliated with them, they spun out an endowment fund that was separate and apart from the original affiliation, but it was still solely dedicated to supporting the patient care services at Riverside Shore Memorial Hospital. And recently, we're very excited that foundation has now become part of the Riverside Health System Foundation, still wholly dedicated to supporting the important patient care services on the Eastern Shore at Riverside Shore Memorial Hospital, but it represents the largest commitment to the Riverside Foundation to date. Over that time, Karameen Kellum and both Karameen and Pete Layler have played a tremendous role in the leadership at the Shore facility, as well as the leadership at the Health System Board. And Karameen also played an important role on the foundation board as well. So we have a tremendous debt of gratitude to them in terms of their commitment to the citizens on the Eastern Shore and their commitment to Riverside.
In 2008, Pierre and Catherine Dohe left their estate to the Riverside Foundation for the care of Riverside Hospice. Pierre and Catherine had been married lifelong sweethearts, and Catherine unfortunately died in 2001. Pierre was so moved by the amount of care and comfort that Riverside Hospice had provided Catherine in her final days that he and Catherine determined that they would bequest their estate to the Riverside Foundation. Pierre and Catherine had sailed around the world on their sailboat, traveling to such exotic places like India, England, South America, and Australia, but they had settled in their later years in Kilmarnock, Virginia. When we received the call that the estate had been bequested to Riverside Foundation, Debbie Atkinson and I went to Kilmarnock to learn more about Pierre and Catherine. Pierre and Catherine had settled on the banks of the river in Kilmarnock, and in their home had many interesting artifacts that we were able to share both with Riverside and the greater community. In 2008, we received a call that Mr. Pierre Dohe had passed away. Debbie Atkinson and I were called to go to Kilmarnock to learn more about him. Upon arriving at his home in Kilmarnock, we learned that Mr. Dohe had had a wife named Catherine who had passed away in 2001. Catherine had been cared for by our Riverside Hospice team, and through that care, Mr. Dohe and Mrs. Dohe had determined that they would leave their entire estate to the Riverside Foundation for the benefit of Riverside Hospice. Mr. Dohe and Mrs. Dohe had traveled around the world extensively on their sailboat and gained a lot of artifacts and interesting items that they also left to the foundation. Debbie and I had the pleasure of learning more and more about the Dohes and how special and unique not only were their lives, but their true love and gratitude for Riverside. Through the artifacts, Debbie and I were able to better understand who Mr. and Mrs. Dohe were as people and further understand their gratitude and love for Riverside. Riverside's hospice team touched the Dohes in immeasurable ways, and as a result, Riverside's hospice team touched the Dohes in immeasurable ways, and as a result, they felt compelled. Riverside Hospice team helped the Dohes in immeasurable ways, and as a result, they were moved to leave all of their belongings to Riverside Foundation. Throughout this entire process, Debbie treated the Dohe estate like it was her own personal family. She went above and beyond just the foundation director's role. She learned more and more about who he was as a person and who his friends were, reaching out to people far away to make sure that they A, knew he had passed, and B, giving the artifacts that she felt would be important to them back to them.
Sure. As I mentioned, when we first came there, we were really coming to help the community. So it wasn't natural for us to ask the community for help in the beginning of our tenure in the Tappahannock region. Quite the contrary, we were often the gifter. And so frequently we would be asked to support community needs, whether it was fire and rescue, or whether it was police, or it was the school system, or wherever there was a need, we were asked to do that. And we did that. And I can remember talking with our board about how to align our gifts appropriately. And the recommendation I remember Francis Ellis saying this very early on, is align it with where our team members have their passions. And so Debbie Atkinson had come up, and we were just beginning to talk about the foundation and the Make a Difference Fund. And she said, let's try this Cash for Caring idea, where we can support the things that the team members are already supporting. And so we did kind of a little pilot program where our team members could tell us that they had donated a certain number of hours to the local Little League or to the Cancer Society or wherever they were choosing to put their own time, and we would match it with a $100 contribution. So we kind of wanted to make sure we instilled that mission in our own team members, that giving and being a part of the community and deep relationships in the community are important, by helping to match that. But over time, Debbie and I kind of had a lot of discussions about, in a community of this size, where the hospital is the largest employer, major economic impact to the community, just in terms of retaining or attracting residents to the community, the importance of the hospital was really, really critical. And so in most communities like this, the hospital would be a charitable donation location of its own. And so we wanted to talk about how to flip the tables on where we had been, of course, continuing to contribute to the community, but how we could help the community understand why we were worthy of their contributions as well. So we started off initially with making sure we knew how people could be recognized, and created a donor tree, where we could recognize people who are making contributions. And we asked them to do that in recognition of care they had received. So they could make donations honoring a caregiver, a physician, or a whole program that they felt they had been supported by. And we saw people get interested in that. So it was a good starting point. And then Frances Ellis also, continuing on our board. She's been on our board the entire time I've been involved with Riverside. Had to take a 1-year break because of our term limits, and then we put her right back on. But she really always had kind of that vision of we can do more to partner in the community around this. So she and Debbie and I talked a lot about how do we take it to the next level. And Frances's recommendation was we need something the community can really put their arms around. So she brought some community members together, Marion Rowe, Patricia Gallagher, Mr. Croxton, a variety of folks from the community, and said, this is what we want to do. What kind of things do you think the community would support? And they said, well, what kind of things does the hospital need? And we went through lists of things that ranged from $10,000 to multi-million dollars. And that multi-million dollar thing was converting to private rooms. We were in an older facility, all semi-private rooms, and it was probably one of the largest barriers we had to providing an environment that could compete with Richmond hospitals. So I thought that's too much to ask to support a multi-million dollar project. But that group said, no, the community can get around this one more than anything else. They know the value of it. They will feel vested in this building forever if they're a part of it. And so this is where we should go. And with that, we kicked off our first major capital campaign, Building a Better Place to Heal. And it took years, but I believe the total raise was well over $800,000 in our community, to which Riverside matched the funds needed to complete the project. And now we are a fully private room hospital, beautiful upgrades to the rooms, private baths, et cetera. It looks like an entirely different place, and we can deliver entirely different care with that privacy and safe environment. Sure, our volunteers are just an amazing group of folks. We have this tradition of giving them a raise every year, doubling their salary, because of course it's all volunteers. So we have a running joke where they say, can I get another raise, Mrs. Martin? But the work that they do is amazing, mostly in their time, even more than the treasures that we talk about. The hours and hours and the heartfelt care that they provide to our patients, whether they're greeting them, coming through to their rooms to give them comfort, or whether they're in the back office doing just some administrative work for us. They're all contributing in ways that they can bring their particular talents to the table. But they also have a significant fundraising arm, so they have a lot of different events throughout the year where they're raising funds for us. They've contributed to every campaign we've had. Even before the capital campaign around the private rooms, they supported the building of our helipad, for example. They're very proud of that. We have a sign down there to designate that that was funding from them. They've got multiple leaves on our tree where they have contributed each year another chunk of dollars. It's immeasurable what they contribute both in their time and their treasure. Right. In addition to the major program around the private room campaign, the funding that comes through our Make a Difference Fund efforts on an ongoing basis, because we continue to receive donations from the community, go through patient assistance funds. So oftentimes we are working with patients who have needs beyond what we can provide in our own building. It may be they need their air conditioner fixed. It may be that they need transportation funding. It may be clothing. Sometimes it's the most basic things and sometimes very unusual things. But those funds are what help us to make sure that that patient truly has a safe discharge from our hospital. The Dohe gift, which was a $400,000 bequest that we surprisingly received in 2009, was designated toward hospice care. And so those funds particularly go to patients who are benefiting from our hospice program, whether it's to support medical supplies or expenses for drugs that they may need, whether it's training for our staff in the hospice program, even funeral expenses for those who can't afford that are often covered through those programs. That Dohe gift came in right at the beginning of our capital campaign for the private rooms, so it was a great launching pad to really talk to the community about not only giving dollars now, but bequests in the future.
Reflections and thoughts about Frances Ellis and her leadership?
Frances Ellis is an amazing woman. I've had the privilege of knowing her since 1995, so many, many years. And I look to her as a mentor in many ways, oftentimes as a mom to give me kind of advice. But in terms of her her support of Riverside. I don't know a better steward of our organization than Frances Ellis. She's from our local community. She kind of stewards the community, not just the hospital, but she sees those things as so integrally linked. And she has been a great listener. She has great situational awareness. She knows when to stop and just listen and let it kind of sink in before we respond. But she also knows very well when it's time to stand up and say, this is the way it needs to be. We need to do something around this. We need you to step up and help us. She knows how to do those things. She's taught me about the importance of relationships, because that's what really helps to drive philanthropy, is the relationships people have. So I've learned so much from her. You know, she's a classy lady. I've also learned how to classy cuss through her. She's a lot of fun. We have a great long-term relationship, and on our board, she's been the chairman of the board for the past, I think, 4 or 5 years now, and has done a phenomenal job, as well has served as the foundation's board chair for a number of years in our history. I anticipate she will always be part of the leadership of our organization, whether it's formally or informally, because her heart is with us wherever we go. So, yeah. So all of the people on this, so I don't know if this is a good way to say it, but when I look at the folks being honored through this, I don't know, what is the program? What do we call this? Through this effort? Okay. Yeah.
Because that's, if you want to sum up.
Yeah.
That,
Yeah. So as we look at the people that we're honoring through this 20th anniversary of the foundation, there are so many names on the list that have meant so much to me and my personal development, but so much to Riverside and our growth. There's no one who's more about the community than Jerry Brink. There's no one who's more about health and wellness and really thinking long-term about how we really make a difference in people's lives than Caroline Martin. Debbie Atkinson is a visionary when it comes to relationship development and understanding philanthropy and how to really develop that. Frances Ellis, all of those folks are people I put on my very short list of having made huge impact in my personal life, my personal career, and Riverside. Mr. Brink saw his job well beyond the hospital walls. He saw himself as a community leader and proved that in every way that he lived and worked. He worked a lot. he got more hours than anyone, and he expected all of us to as well. But as we were young administrators working under his leadership, he would bring us along and tell us how important it was that we were participating in this community event or that community event, and that it was a big part of our jobs. And so I've always kind of taken that to heart, and I think lived it in my own career. Let's see. There's no single person who has meant more to my success than Caroline Martin. She was my mentor from the day I came to Riverside. I actually came to Riverside because she recruited me at an event that she was in when I was in graduate school. And she takes people under her wings. She's a real mentor. I know Faye and Tracy Kermian and others, and I have all really benefited from that ability to teach, to practice tough love, to give us the good lessons we needed to hear, but also to always know we were fully supported. I've never learned as much as I've learned from Caroline Martin, and I take that with me, and I always think about things, and hopefully I'm making her proud in decisions I'm making and behaviors I'm displaying. Let's see. Rick and Kathy Pierce have just made an amazing contribution to Riverside over decades. Rick has been my direct boss at times, always the big boss, but sometimes my direct boss, and I had a lot of fun working for him. I always understood where we were going with things. He had a vision and a mission for what he wanted to accomplish. When I think about who Riverside is and the small rural communities that we serve, which is a very unusual footprint for a health system of our size, that's with his vision and desire to serve regions that truly needed care and might not get it otherwise, and to do it with excellence, not just to, put a pin in it, but to do it really well. And so I was privileged to have the opportunity both in Tappahannock and in Gloucester to contribute to his vision.
The irony is that long before there was a foundation, some of the key players were already leaning in. If you think about the absolute pillar role that the physicians of the community played in founding Riverside back in the 1915 time frame, for example, when they started with a 2-year management contract to really bring the hospital to life. You think about the role that the shipyard played as the largest employer in the area, and the multitude of individuals involved with the shipyard and the shipyard itself that helped get the hospital started. And then the volunteers. So much of the work that was done at that time, just after the turn of the century, was volunteer, community-driven effort. And I think their story, the story of the doctors, the story of the community coming together is something that weaves throughout not just Riverside's history, but the history and the upbringing, the beginning, the spark of the Riverside Foundation. The literal founding of the Riverside Foundation was in the fall of 1999 when Caroline Martin instigated the project of investigating the formation of a foundation. She turned to, found, and brought Debbie Atkinson in on that very natural evolution, because Debbie was already working for and with Caroline in the evolution of Riverside's role as a community benefit partner. So that team, and then with Jerry Brink stepping into the official first executive role for the Riverside Foundation, in large part supported by Rick Pierce and McKinley Price as that first founding chairman of our board, made 1999 a very, very special year. But then 2007 by any measure was a incredible year for the Riverside Foundation. In part, you have things like the gift from the McClearys, that's Robert and Susan, Colonel Robert and Susan McCleary, and the help that they gave us in developing the Abernathy Gardens. Dr. Mark and Lynn Ellis, already very important heartbeats in the community, making one of the initially quite large gifts in terms of an endowment to support things that other people might have considered to be extra, but they knew were fundamental to caring for cancer patients as you would care for those you love. Mark having that extra insight of having been a cancer patient and at that point a cancer survivor himself. Ruby Pope Drum invested in by making the largest donation in our what was then the School of Health Careers, today the College of Health Careers, helping to move forward on behalf of an organization that had shaped her life. She had been a young nursing student at our college, or at our School of Health Careers, our nursing school. And her gift to us showed up in 2007 in memory of her husband, Vernon Bethune, Golden Bethune, in an extraordinary gift and in a way that brought her life, continued to entwine her life with Riverside. At her New Year's Eve marriage to Charlie Hill, Golden, then Bethune, that night becoming Golden Hill, and Charlie dedicated their dollars to any gifts received in their name to the Riverside Foundation. A remarkable way of continuing to fold not only Vernon, her ex-husband, who had been cared for at Riverside, but Golden's own career at Riverside into her future, her very happy and bright future moving forward with Charlie by her side. Okay. 2007 then also became officially the year that we, the Riverside Foundation, made the flip from being an office of community benefit, where we were gifting in the form of grant dollars, we were gifting to others. We moved from that community benefit endeavor to an office of development, where we began to attract those philanthropic dollars that until that point had almost organically been finding their way to us as a result of people's gratitude, people's appreciation, and as I came to understand later, because of the mentorship of Debbie Atkinson, literally dollars coming to us as part of healing. That point in time where individuals are no longer taking the care, receiving the help, receiving the support, but they have healed to the point that they are ready to be the ones giving back and gifting and closing that loop as they really take control of the situation. 2007, by any measure, was a benchmark year for the Riverside Foundation. Early that year, we received the word from Bob and Susan McCreary that they were going to fund and support the development of the Abernathy Gardens. They were in memory of Susan's father, who had been a community leader. He had been an official at the Newport News shipyard, or at the shipyard, as well as a previous mayor of the city of Warwick before it was incorporated into Newport News. And from that early point, the entire year of 2007, just really began to grow and bloom for us. That was the year that the foundation converted from being, in essence, an office of community benefit, where we were, via grant processes, gifting money to various startup causes related to health and wellness around the region, to becoming an office of philanthropic development, where we recognized that this wide variety of gifts that had almost organically come our way from the community, from the shipyard, from individuals, from families like the McCrearys, from families like Dr. Mark Ellis and his wife Lynn, this began to register with us as a new norm and a way to really be able to do those extraordinary things that other people might consider to be extras, but that we recognized are really the way that you should deliver healthcare services, and that extra level of warmth that you want for the community you serve. Another extraordinary gesture at the end of 2007 came about as a result of the marriage of Golden Bethune to Charlie Hill. They married at midnight on the evening, New Year's Eve, the end of 2007, moving into 2008, and in an extraordinarily kind gesture to recognize Golden's late husband, Vernon, made all of the gifts, made it a preference that in lieu of gifts, that contributions be made to the Riverside Foundation to honor Vernon. Vernon had been cared for at Riverside. Golden had come home to this area and had entrusted that care to Riverside. Golden herself had a long and very successful career at Riverside, and it was really during this period of time that she began to speak on occasion of a future dream she had, and one that eventually W.M. Jordan leaned in, Johnny Lawson leaned in on. Golden's late husband, Vernon, had been cared for at Riverside. Golden's career had entwined with Riverside for many, many years, and she had returned home in part to care for Vernon, but in part to join and rejoin Riverside. And then it was during this period of time that she began to share with others her interest in eventually helping to shape and structure and lead a free clinic on the east end of Riverside. And a very important partnership began to form there, not only Riverside and Golden and Charlie Hill, but also W.M. Jordan and John Lawson, who immediately picked up on that concept and helped move forward later with the building and the establishment of the free clinic itself. You simply cannot talk about Riverside without talking about the physicians, and of course as the caregivers, of course as people who are essential to the care team, but it goes so far beyond that as community members who very early along became deeply engaged and took on the first management contract in Riverside Health, not Riverside Health System, Newport News General and Non-Sectarian Hospital back in 1915. You look at family lines. You look at Dr. Jack Lawson, who, along with Mr. Abernathy, Dr. Jack Lawson was one of those individuals in 1983 with Caroline Martin, with Jerry Brink, with Rick Pierce, and with other community founding fathers, if you will. Dr. Jack Lawson was one of those sitting there as Riverside Healthcare Association, Inc., the precursor for Riverside Health System, was formed at the very first meeting. And then his nephew, Dr. Bland Lawson, moves through our history as really one of the founding fathers of our trauma program and the enhancement of our trauma program. Dr. Mark Ellis, who leaned in and literally helped build and shape the presence of Riverside Doctors Hospital of Williamsburg for years before the hospital itself became a reality, helping to establish a second generation of a cancer program within the Riverside Health System. And he could not, or perhaps would not have done that without Lynn Ellis at his side, sometimes in front, other times at his side, sometimes right behind him, helping him move it along. Dr. Price was the perfect first board chair. And not only as we began that process of gifting and giving grants to the community, but as we made that very meaningful transition from gift giver to gift destination. And Dr. Price was effortless in the way that he helped shape and lead us through that work. He was unmatchable in terms of not only the energy, but the creativity, and usually just a little bit of mischief tied in. He was masterful at helping to shape Rick Pierce's ideas and vision of what the foundation could become, and blah, 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 blah. One of the many reasons Diana LeVecchio is so important to the foundation is she helped us develop a direct connection with so many of the organizations and companies around not just the peninsula, but all of our regions, who were helping to shape and demonstrate and manifest what Riverside facilities would look like. It's one thing to have a facility that looks good. Diana made sure that our facilities embraced and hugged not just the patients, but the patients and the families. And by so doing, they became an invitation for individuals to continue to support Remarkable. Think of facilities, everything from our neonate units to our oncology care units to our trauma facility and our emergency room, every one of them designed with an eye towards how welcomed and how cared for they made a family feel. And that has to exist before individuals in your community really will believe that you are doing everything you do for the benefit of their healing and their comfort.
Diana was an amazing leader. Not only could she build amazing buildings, but she could provide the vision of Riverside to the construction companies that she did business with on a daily basis. She helped the construction companies and leaders of those companies see the importance of giving back to Riverside, and through their giving back to Riverside, to giving back to the community as a whole. I can say something else. Do you want me to say that again? Because I want to say, she really did tell them how giving back, giving money, donating money to the foundation allowed them to live on through the foundation and give back to the community as a whole because of Riverside's key influences in the communities in which we reside. So, I mean, I think that is like really what she did well. She sold the mission of Riverside and sold the mission of, you know, why it was important to give money back to the foundation so we could continue to do the good work of Riverside, not only through the structure of our buildings and how they made patients feel as they come into the buildings, but also through all the charitable donations that we give to the outside communities outside the four walls of the hospital. But that is really what she did. I mean, she was awesome at telling people, hey, I know you're building this huge building for us, but look at what else we're doing. We're not only just doing this huge building and all these patients are going to come through the doors, but we have all these other services and soft services that we don't get paid for, and that is why it's important to give back to the foundation so people can have music therapy and pet therapy and special things in their rooms that we otherwise don't get reimbursed for. And she sold that idea because she believed in the idea.
So again, our hospital actually parallels Riverside on Newport News in a lot of ways. The concept of a hospital for the Eastern Shore came around in 1903. Dr. William Sturgis was the father of the hospital and conceived the idea, and local community members joined in to help raise the funds for the original hospital. And one of those groups is what is now the Riverside Shore Memorial Hospital Auxiliary, led by Mrs. Bessie Anderson at the time. And they actually helped raise the money through subscription and bake sales to open the original hospital in 1928 in Nassauatix. And that hospital served the community until 1971, when a newer hospital was built in Nassauatix. And that was the hospital that we moved from in 2017 to this location here in Anancock. So gifting, I think, is probably one of the most important parts of our legacy and our history. Gifting actually created the hospital, as I said, in the 19-teens up to 1928, the hospital auxiliary. So we have a long history on the Eastern Shore of community support for our hospital and for other community endeavors. And the hospital auxiliary is the foundation of that. Absolutely. The hospital auxiliary, as I said, was really the beginning of our hospital, and they've continued to play an important part of that since then. They've been an important part of not only funding through the hospital ball and the auxiliary gift shop, but through leadership. I think they set the example to the community, not just in giving, but in leading people to recognize and support the local hospital. Through the donations that they've acquired and stewarded toward us, we've funded improvements in mother-baby. We've improved funding for refurbishment of the old hospital over time, and most recently equipment here in the mother-baby unit for mobile fetal monitoring. Most recently a commitment to replace all the bassinets here. They've also funded through Carolyn Kellum's leadership with the auxiliary, the Lloyd J. Kellum Heart Center, as well as several pieces of equipment since then, vascular ultrasound, cardiac ultrasound. So it had been a very important part of us moving forward over time. I think if you had to point to a single individual that has been instrumental in the success of the hospital in the Eastern Shore, it would be Caramine. I only had the chance to work with Caramine for several years, but immediately upon meeting her and recognizing the skill with which she led community effort and the board to get us to where we are today, I think it's not an exaggeration to say without Caramine's leadership that we would not have a hospital on the Eastern Shore now. Caramine is from the Eastern Shore, grew up here, set several community leadership positions. She's actually been the longest serving member of the Riverside Shore Memorial Hospital Board and the only person to serve as chairman of that board twice. Sure. The Shore Health Foundation was founded 1959 and was the endowment fund for the hospital. And since that time have been very generous in supporting indigent care and also some of the parallel some of the same projects that the auxiliary did in terms of funding equipment and even broader than that, funding pre-hospital care through EMS donations as well as funding equipment here in the new hospital. So I think it's a big win for us because by combining forces, we're not only combining finances and taking the advantage of investing that kind of money, but there's still a commitment to the shore, and those funds earmarked for the shore by the shore still remain here on the shore for use on the shore. So I think it certainly ensures that the endowment continues. And the endowment will be even stronger under the Riverside Foundation. So I think, certainly you just mentioned one, the Shore Cancer Center, which opened in 2003. So prior to that, cancer care, including medical oncology, infusion chemotherapy, and radiation therapy, were not available on the shore. Through the community and through some of the leaders from the auxiliary and the Shore Foundation helped raise the money to build that building in Nassawadox. And that building now has actually been repurposed as the Eastern Shore Family Medicine Center. So we have a primary care practice there. So that building continues on. You mentioned the Lloyd Kellum Heart Center, the auxiliary, and Caramine led an effort there to raise a substantial sum of money to fund the equipment and outfitting of the Kellum Heart Center, which we use today. So certainly the Shore Foundation has earmarked money for indigent care, but a bigger one now that I think that a lot of people find comfort in donating to is the Shore Cancer Care Fund. So that is a fund under the Riverside Foundation specifically for patients with cancer. It helps not just with the cost of their care, but cost of living expenses and travel to and from the hospital. Yeah, I think the most important thing about the Shore Health Foundation and the auxiliary is that sense of leadership, that sense of community. We often say a community hospital exists for the community, but it exists because the community supports it. And I think the foundation and the auxiliary demonstrate to the community leadership and the importance of supporting the local hospital. Yeah, I've got the names. I didn't really write out snippets. So I was just going to call them out, kind of just a chance to say that not only have I had the opportunity to work with leaders here on the shore, but throughout my 30-year career here at Riverside, I've had the chance to work with and learn from people like Mr. Brink, Golden Bethune, Caroline Martin, Diana LaVecchio, Francis Ellis from Tappahannock during my brief period there. And worked with Steve Spain over numerous projects over 30 years as Riverside has grown.
Yeah, I can only speak to the auxiliary.
Yeah, you were.
Because I really don't even know what the foundation
About the piece
is.
of so they bought.
Yeah, no, I can do that kind
that.
of stuff. Yeah. But the way Riverside impacted the Eastern Shore, I don't think we would have been here without Riverside this long, because of the way rural hospitals are nationwide taking a hit just because of reimbursements and lack of subspecialty coverage, distances involved in the current healthcare climate. So Riverside, I think, picking up our hospital has done a huge service for this geographically isolated peninsula that has about 50,000 residents and 20,000 more during the summer for pony penning. And the availability of a hospital, clinic, multi-specialty group has really saved us from disaster, I think, for this geographic population, certainly. And as far as the Ladies Auxiliary is concerned, they've done extraordinary work for the hospital. They always historically have. This hospital was a community hospital built by farmers donating and having bake sales and things like that back in the 20s. And this community never really had a hospital. They had a hard-working bunch of general practitioners spread out all across the county, but when they decided finally to build a hospital, the community chipped in, churches chipped in, and organizations chipped in, and brick by brick they built that old hospital down there, and it's always been great. And as the times progressed, and as far as healthcare, it became a matter of money. Had not Riverside taken care of us here, I'd be back in Philadelphia probably. And Ladies Auxiliary has been a big help here as far as maintaining not just quality, but superior quality equipment for cardiology. We just got a brand new vascular Doppler machine, which is top shelf, state of the art, to the largesse of our Ladies Auxiliary. And that's just the way this community's always been. It's a very close-knit, geographically isolated community, currently receiving a lot of international press, but that's going on the kitchen floor there. And but the community's always helped out, and Ladies Auxiliary's been at the forefront of that. And I can't say too much about their not just cooperation, but their enthusiastic cooperation about maintaining the quality of advanced technological devices that we have to serve this patient population. There, let's stop for that. You got any other questions?
Yeah.
Oh.
That's great, yeah. So you talked a little bit about just the impact it's had on the culture. Has there been any particular moment that you knew where there's a new piece of equipment or support for a patient that kind of came through private, either the Riverside Foundation or any sort of private funding that you think really made a difference?
I know about the Ladies Auxiliary
Sure, right,
with the
or,
machines,
yeah,
that and at the cardiology center. But as far as the foundation, do you know anything about that?
Well,
Okay, he'll know those
Yeah,
questions.
let me rephrase that. So, can you speak to what your practice would be like without that piece of equipment? How would that affect the community? What would we be? Where would we be without that?
It's not that helpful. I mean, it's important. It's it's nice to have it, but give me something else.
Okay.
That's not.
Having 4 neurointerventionists.
Yeah, that's Riverside helping us. That's let me do that.
Sure.
All right, yeah. So one of the big things that Riverside has offered us as far as the revolutionary care of stroke and stroke patients is the fact that we have so many neurointerventionalists right at Riverside that are ready to go at the drop of a phone call to the transfer center, and I can have them over there and world-class neurointerventionalists removing clots and saving people's lives that was unthinkable years ago. And because of the distance and the time-sensitive nature of acute stroke, being able to get somebody to Riverside quick as a hiccup has made a tremendous difference. And that liaison, we just couldn't have established that any other way. And leaving people to die of treatable diseases or be disabled from treatable diseases just because of geography and distance, Riverside has literally ended that practice now for cardiology. I mean, for stroke. Yeah, no, I'm sorry, for stroke. I was just thinking of that.
And you can re-say it too if you'd like.
Yeah, no, I just said that Riverside has completely eliminated the death by distance paradigm that used to occur with stroke. for a geographically isolated place. We have the Atlantic Ocean on our left and the Chesapeake Bay on our right, but a helicopter will fly me to Newport News faster than you can say Jack Robinson. So I can save people's lives. Riverside can save people's lives. Yeah. Give me something else.
All right, what else do you think is good on there?
I don't have that. I don't have the. David Jones keeps asking about these not eureka moments. These what are those things? Huh? Yeah, right. Yeah, that happens every day here, man.
Yeah, I mean, what else is, I mean, we sent these over, but what else comes to mind to you, that's important for people to know? Because we don't have to just focus in on philanthropy, but what do you want people to know about the work that you all are able to do in the community? I mean, you really.
Yeah, okay, I can do some of that. We have a telemedicine capability here that's second to none and is expanding, actually. We have now a movement disorder clinic with Dr. Butler via telemedicine, as my patients don't have to drive across the bay and over the bridge and to pay the toll, and they can see a specialist in movement disorders, a pure movement disorder specialist instead of a general neurologist, and we plan to expand that. Hopefully we're going to be able to do follow-up strokes with the stroke team over there, and eventually memory disturbance, a memory disorder clinic. All those things are capable, are available now because Riverside's been hooked up and wired up and has led in this sort of new technology and its adaptation to rural communities with our spoke and hub model. And I think that's going to be the future of a lot of specialty care. There's just not enough specialists, especially in rural areas, and there's certainly not enough subspecialists in rural areas. And I'm committed to the rural area. I left Philadelphia for the rural area. And if we can have these things through Riverside, then I plan to stay as long as I can.
Can you speak to the disconnect between what the general population thinks they know about the cost of healthcare and what the realities are for an entity like Riverside? So basically, we get the comment a lot, oh, I saw that brand new building go up, what do you need my money for? Can you speak to the difference between what's in the budget and what philanthropy can help offset? And what people perceive?
Money is good. The reimbursement for health care in a rural, underserved area is not good. Our demographics are not affluent suburbia. Our demographics are watermen and farmers and 10,000 migrant workers from other countries each summer picking tomatoes. And you can only get so much income when somebody's insurance is Mutual of Guadalajara. So philanthropy is a big help here. And the Ladies Auxiliary has been able to come up with money here at our institution. The foundation works that way too, I believe. And without that, just relying on the reimbursement we get from our patients to continue to run this aspect of our healthcare system here in rural America may be an impossibility. Thank you. And when a Mutual Guadalajara ends up on the floor, I won't be surprised.
It's okay. And there was a perfect cut line. I heard it in there. People like right before, right
That's
after.
right. There's a little pause there.
It
It's
was
for
really
you.
funny. I tried not to laugh.
No, that's okay. You can do
Yeah,
it.
yeah. Well, do you all, so do you feel good? I feel good listening to it. I mean, I don't want you to
I don't
walk out
care.
here and think, gosh, I forgot to say.
I got too much. I got nothing to say. I'm doing this for Tanya. No, but I mean about this kind of stuff. I did this for Tanya because I got too much to do here. I discontinued a heparin drip at 8:30. It's still running upstairs, and they're calling me about a PTT greater than 200 on something that was discontinued at 8:30.
Carmine Kellum, who is responsible for a lot of this, has been an acquaintance and friend for many of those years. She worked as my mother-in-law's unofficial agent for years, peddling paintings, often with part of the proceeds going to support the auxiliary in the hospital. Since Riverside came, we do a lot of things to support the Riverside Foundation, which has been very helpful to me as a hospice medical director. The foundation is able to help support patients' needs for things that insurance won't cover, hospice doesn't cover. They've helped with furniture, air conditioners, refrigerators, clothing, expenses for travel for family to come visit dying relatives. They've helped us with end-of-life funeral expenses for a couple of people. It's a great, they do some great things for us. We're very happy to have the foundation's support and help on all this. Karamine has been hospital board chair twice. I think she's the only person who has that distinction. I asked her when she took it on the second time why, and she said she wasn't sure, but she was willing to do it and crazy enough to accept. She helped shepherd the change from independent Shore Health to Riverside, realizing at the time that there were financial hurdles ahead that we could not meet as a small, independent rural hospital. The cost of doing business is just too great. The other advantage to being part of a system like Riverside is they've got a depth of knowledge, administratively, legally, human resources, all the things that we would have had to go out and find on our own. I was board chair in the late 90s, so I completely understand all of this. We were talking then about what do we do about going forward? How do we take a 40-plus-year-old out-of-date hospital, upgrade it for the future? We basically decided we really couldn't. And eventually the board started looking for a partner, and Riverside seemed to be the best of the many options, and it's worked out remarkably well. We're sitting in a new $80 million facility, highly trained specialists who worked here, cardiologists, oncologists. One of the founders of the hospital was a Johns Hopkins trained surgeon. He happened to be from here, and when he finished his residency back in the 20s, he said, you know, the Eastern Shore really needs a hospital, because then you either went by train 85 miles north to Maryland, or you took the ferry to Norfolk, being no bridge in that era. So they had a vision, they wanted a hospital, they made it a good place to work, and we've always taken care of most of the things the community needs. We're one of the few rural hospitals that still has an active mother and baby unit. We still do, not me, the obstetricians still do about 500 deliveries a year out here. Otherwise, those folks, those mothers, would have to figure out, am I going to drive an hour north or an hour south in labor? People in general have a misperception of what healthcare costs. They know what they spend on health insurance. They know what they spend on prescription drugs and doctor bills, but that doesn't cover nearly all the costs or expenses of running a healthcare entity in any area, much less in a rural area. There was a lot of discussion in the newspapers over the last year or two after the hospital moved about having an urgent care center someplace in the lower county, which people all thought, oh yeah, that's easy to do. You can just get a building, get a doctor, get a nurse. I have a master's in health administration and understand the costs. A reasonably staffed urgent care center costs about $2.5 million a year to operate. Well, how many visits do you have to cover that cost? A whole lot. So we have a ER up here, which I have no idea how much it costs to run the place, but they do 20,000 visits a year with one or more full-time certified ER physicians on call 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, plus trauma nurses, radiology techs, CAT scan techs, lab folks, blood bank, and on and on and on. So we wind up asking people in the community to give funds for the things that aren't covered by insurance, things that aren't covered by operations, generated by operations. And it may be something as simple as some clothes for somebody to wear home when they've come in after a motor vehicle accident and their clothes were destroyed. It may be helping underwrite the cost of giving enough medicine to last till they can get a prescription filled. It may be home oxygen, it may be a walker, who knows? There's a bunch of things that people need that they can't afford, and Riverside tries to help out and get them so they can go home and be reasonably better than when they came in.
Collis Huntington, who was the founder of the shipyard, was a traveling salesman, lived up in New England. And he came down to the peninsula and wandered around and thought that it would be a great place someday for deepwater port. And he ended up buying or partnering with a guy named, I think, Stanford, the Southern Pacific Railroad. And they, sooner or later, he bought coal mines in the western part of Virginia and decided they needed a deepwater port to export the coal. And so that's how he got the idea of coming to Newport News again and creating a city. He created something called the Old Dominion Land Company, and they bought all the farms that were down here on the peninsula. And the project really got started, I think, in 1881. I remember that I have a map showing the city in 1881 with the little 25-foot by 100-foot deep lots that they had, and the few streets. It went up to like, I don't know, 40th Street, 45th Street, and to the east it went to, I don't know, not far as Pear Avenue, I don't think, and down to the water. And there was a single line of what was then the Chesapeake and Ohio Railroad that came through town and curved and went down to the waterfront. And there was a single pier. And the railroad operated and exported coal, and they sold lots. There was a sort of what we'd call a brochure today, but there was a letter that included the map and offered to sell lots, I think, for $15 a lot. And people started coming, and they realized that as the ships came to get the coal, they needed to be repaired. So he started the Newport News Shipbuilding and Dry Dock Company, and I think that opened in 1885, 86, yes, 1886. And started employing people and repairing ships mostly. And the first ship they built was the Dorothy, which is a tug and is on display downtown on Huntington Avenue in front of the shipyard. And as time went on, the country went to war in World War I and World War II, and they started building ships for the Navy. They built merchant ships and started employing a lot of people, which brought people here. The need became clear to have hospital facilities for the workers and their families. And so there was a doctor in town whose name was S.W. Hobson. And Mr. Post was president of the shipyard at the time, and they got together and decided to build a hospital, and they started raising money to do that. And the first hospital for Riverside was at 50th Street between Huntington Avenue and what was then called Warwick Avenue, I think. And There were 44,000 people in Newport News in the city limits back then, and 20-some thousand people, I think, working at the shipyard back then. And they needed a healthcare facility, and so Riverside was conceptualized and built. There was also a hospital on the waterfront on Chesapeake Avenue, the Buxton Hospital, owned by Samuel Buxton, who was a physician, and his family. And the hospital stayed there. By 1960, Newport News had consolidated with the city of Warwick and became a larger city, Newport News, and it became clear that the old hospital on 50th Street wasn't adequate to meet the needs of a population that was expanding to the what I call the north, and some would call the west, but that way. And so money was raised. Interestingly enough, the shipyard had been a contributor and supporter of the hospital for all those years, and workers went there and were treated, cared for. I think in 1960, Riverside got the shipyard to allow workers to do a payroll deduction to contribute to the construction of the hospital. And it was interesting for a number of reasons. One, because they raised a lot of money, $750,000 or something like that, if my memory serves me. But it also gave a buy-in to the shipyard workers who really thought they owned the hospital. And they have this, and continue to have, I think, a feeling of ownership because of the money they contributed to the effort to build the hospital. And the hospital has obviously grown from at the same location, became much more technologically competent, provided many more services, School of Nursing, all kinds of modern technology, level 2, I think, trauma center, and has become a mainstay of medical care here on the peninsula and regions beyond, of course, expanding to the Eastern Shore and Williamsburg and Rappahannock and Gloucester. So it's a regional medical center in every aspect and sense of that word, and has impacted on the lives of countless thousands of people. So the people that have made that happen have been many, and have made significant contributions. Jerry Brink served as administrator for a long time, and Rick Pierce, Martin.
Caroline Martin.
Yeah, Caroline Martin, and Bethune Hill. Golden Bethune Hill, who continues to run a clinic in the community and very much committed to health care. So there have been lots of leadership. Conway Shield, one of the people that is being recognized, has been instrumental in this, and so many people have engaged because they recognize the significance of having a first-rate hospital and medical care facility, and because they're committed and dedicated to the community and the well-being of the community. And so Riverside has been a great story about the growth of the community, which its growth paralleled, and a great story about how people that care can make a difference. And there are a lot of people who care who have made a difference and who have made Riverside into the outstanding institution that it is today. One of those people that I'd like to mention is our current mayor, McKinley Price, who was the first chairman of the foundation, which was dedicated to raising money to support other institutions in the community who were providing services in the community. And when I was able to, I use the word carefully, persuade him to run for mayor. And when I decided to retire, I told him there wasn't much to it, and it didn't take much time. And the night he got elected, I pulled him over and I said, "Come see me tomorrow and I'll tell you the truth about all that." And I did. But he has been an inspirational leader. He cares about the community, cares about the people, and he understands how significant healthcare is in people having lives that are meaningful and productive. So he created the foundation, led it for many years until he became mayor, and then, of course, moved on. So there are lots of stories to be told about lots of people who have come together and made Riverside an institution that is admired and respected and certainly needed in our community. What's important, I think, is that communities who are going to be successful have to have a broad variety of institutions and services that support the quality of life of their citizens. And not the least of those is medical care. Because without good health, you can't accomplish anything, you don't live a decent quality life. I think Riverside saved my life 3 or 4 or 5 times. But people go and they get better for the most part. And it's just a vital service. I mean, things like education and Christopher Newport and the school systems and job creation and workforce training. There's so many things that are important in maintaining the quality of life of a community. But if you don't have your health, you don't have anything. So hospitals are at the forefront of, I think, everything else.
Well, Dr. Lawson at the time was in the trauma group, and he got very emotional over the discussion of abandoning the Level 2 Trauma Center. And so he was, at that time, was sitting on our board of directors, and he was a real asset in us driving the administration to refocus on trauma. Now, trauma now has become a significant part of the activity at Riverside Regional, and it's a very important, service provided for the entire community. Yeah, initially, they were the ones. Bland was heavily involved in the trauma service. It was a difficult service to provide because all of our other physicians were basically, in their offices, were not dedicated to trauma. And they would be called out of their offices, and it was a frustration for them. So refocusing, we have a trauma group now that focuses on trauma. But again, Bland was the one that really pushed the focus on continuing a Level 2 trauma center, because there was a lot of emotion about dropping it to Level 3 or eliminating the trauma service. But it was something that Bland helped us drive. Well, as anyone who knows Dr. Price knows that he is a very community-focused and oriented. And he understood as well as anybody that an important part of a community is, the health service we provide. Not just the clinical service, but the emotional, the personal support that, healthcare needs to provide the community. He's an exceptional leader that really understood and focuses on our community. Just as an example, his leadership as a mayor. Regretfully, he left our board, but he did step into an extremely important role. And but he really understands the need for a strong community. And one of those bases for a strong community is a health system that supports the health of the community. And his vision on the foundation was that, again, we need to do more than just provide the clinical support. We need much more than that. And that can be in the form of support for, not only our patients, but the patients' families, And he had a real understanding of what that need was. Well, again, Conway's one of those people in the community that rarely says no when asked to serve the community. He chaired the Riverside Behavioral Health Board. He's on the regional board. He's on the health system board. Whenever there's a need, Conway steps up. He's the chairman of the foundation board. Just as a good example of his willingness to step up, I think it was the year before last that he and Gordon Gentry agreed to chair the United Way campaign, which is probably the second or third time that Conway's done that. He just seems always willing to step up. He's an extremely valuable board member. He's got a great perspective on the community and our needs. And, just his support, I think, when he was asked to step up to the chair of the foundation board, he did so without hesitation, again, understanding the need and what the foundation can mean to the community. Rick, of course, has been a long time, team member at Riverside, starting initially in lifelong health as he was the old Patrick Henry Hospital. He was an administrator at Patrick Henry Hospital when he first came on board. Patrick Henry Hospital, which has evolved into Warwick Forest. But Rick has served in so many ways, and his vision on healthcare is so important. As an example, the seeking physician leadership in a hospital administration had been critical. He really felt that physicians need to be involved not just in providing the care, but in helping drive the direction of Riverside. The formation of the Riverside Medical Group was a vision of Rick's. Started out very small. This is very visionary. It was way ahead of many health systems in developing the Riverside Medical Group, which now, numbers well over 400 participants in that group. And it's a key part of the service we provide Riverside, and it really establishes our position going into the future. Is to have a strong medical group and to seek leadership from that medical group in terms of who we are as a hospital. Again, this was very visionary. Rick also drove the concept of a regional concept. As an example is Shore Memorial Hospital, Williamsburg Doctors Hospital. These were all visions of Rick's and, have helped solidify ourselves in the region, not only as a Newport News-based hospital, but as a regional medical center and how we serve the whole region. Our physician leadership is so critical in terms of driving our service levels, what we're doing in different areas. As an example, the leadership on our neurosciences has driven Riverside to be one of the top providers of neuroservices in the entire state. Some would say we probably have as an extensive group in our neurosurgery, neurosciences as anybody in the state, and particularly in the region. Nobody has the ability, as an example, to do interventional stroke care. Norfolk doesn't have it. I mean, Richmond and Washington are probably the only two in the area that have that service. But that's just one example in terms of their importance in driving quality and safety. Administrators, again, can, run the business very well. They can be focused on that, but it's the doctors who provide that care that drive the level of safety and quality. And that's been a real focus, and our physician leadership has been a key in that. Our first, I think, physician administrator, it was Pat.
Pat Purcell.
Yeah, Pat Purcell came in as a hospital administrator, and that really changed a lot of the vision within the hospital in terms of providing the quality and his ability to work with the other physicians to to really push the direction of the hospital. So that leadership is so critical. They have the knowledge, they have the clinical knowledge, to understand and help us, drive the whole quality concept at the hospital. Unfortunately, my wife's mother, when she was in her late 30s, developed breast cancer. She fought through that with the support of the physicians at Riverside. It reappeared later when she was approximately 46 years old. She went through a difficult phase with that and eventually passed as a result of the breast cancer. And, our realization not only of, the pain and the emotion that goes into the patient, but the families as well, as in terms of what they have to go through in that process, the emotional support they need as well. And it goes beyond clinical support. It goes to, the emotional, the caring support that the patient receives. And again, it's not just clinical; it's the entire environment of the treatment. And we felt like if there's something we could do to help in that dealing with that emotional situation, it would be beneficial. It's a difficult thing to go through, and cancer is such an issue, and breast cancer, particularly in this community, is a huge problem. Someone mentioned, I think Breast Cancer Awareness Week's coming up. And my point is, you don't need a week or a month. You just need to look in the newspaper every day, and you see the results of breast cancer. And so that was important to us. Yeah, Riverside, of course, the move from downtown Newport News to central Newport News was so critical. And I guess the hospital opened probably in the early 60s, 62, 63. I can relate to that because at the time I graduated from Ferguson High School in the first graduating class, which was in 1963, and at that time the hospital was just coming into being. Now, if you keep that in perspective, as I'm now older, so is that facility. And as our services grew, as our technology grew, the old facility just wasn't adequate anymore. And we've had to grow, and I can't tell you the number of dollars that have been put into the facility, to the existing building and structure itself, to all the things we've added around it, whether it's a cancer treatment center, whether it's the surgery center, the actual building itself. Our emergency room was redone, and we continue. Every month it seems like there's another project that comes up that we're looking at to improve again the quality of service provided to the community. The recent addition of the pavilion, we thought we were fine with 2 stories. We ended up finding out that we needed to turn around and add an additional, 2 levels on top of that. It's a world-class facility. I don't know there's a better facility in the state than what we have in the pavilion. In addition to doing all the things we're doing within the old structure itself, and to focus the services in that area, the highly specialized services, whether it's interventional brain surgery, whether it's radiation surgery with the gamma knife. So there's just so many things we've added and continue to add to keep it up to date. I did not know Dr. Ellis well. I knew him just, casually. My wife, I think, knew him better because I think he was involved with her mother's treatment. But I do know he was very much a gentleman, very much a caring, very, again, not only provided clinical support for his patients, but one of those doctors that really had the ability to provide emotional support too. It may be his own experience with cancer that made him so aware of what they were going through, but he was an exceptional physician in the way he dealt with his patients.
That's excellent. So,
The employees there were the ones that recently made the decision to provide support for the pavilion food facility. It was not the corporate gave the employees the responsibility of selecting where to make donations, and the employees thought that would be the appropriate thing. So the shipyard, in overall, is just a tremendous supporter of the facility. I think they really understand the need for a quality healthcare facility to support their employees and the community.
Golden Bethune Hill is on there, Brink is on there.
Yeah, Golden served as the hospital administrator during my tenure as a chairman, and again, a person who was just totally focused on community health and taking care of everyone in the community. Her efforts with the healthcare facility in the East End to provide free health care is so important to her, and her support of just in general of the community and the importance of the health care that's provided to them. A very strong supporter of of what we're trying to get accomplished.
I think throughout the Riverside health system, volunteers for hospitals tend to have a very unique spirit. They really are very in tune with their communities and really know the needs of the healthcare system. And so when they connect to a program, they really want to give back. And what? See, I get tongue-tied when the.
That was great. That was great.
Wait till the camera starts,
And
then
he
you'll
can,
be really
he can
good.
slice things as long as you have all of the words in there.
That's part of the problem. I'm going to get tongue-tied. I'm going to.
So if you
I think one of our largest projects recently has been the addition of a hospitality suite there at the hospital. I think there was true need seen at the hospital for families to be able to stay over at no expense when they had loved ones in the critical care units. And so we have been able to open, this summer, we will open our second hospitality room and be able to offer those free services to family members.
that was through Make a Difference funds.
Yes, that has all been funded through Make a Difference funds. And then one of our Christopher Newport students has hooked into it with the Ferguson scholarships, and they are now providing gift bags to stock in the rooms with toiletry items, water bottles, little snack bags, that type of thing as well. So the Christopher Newport students have really keyed into some of those needs as well as our older adults.
To the community.
I think when you find small communities like that, I think they are very in tune with what the needs are of the hospital. And so when they started looking at the need for private rooms at the hospital, they took it very personally. They are very connected to their community needs. And so as former patients and family members in small towns, they really were a great support in the fundraising and gaining some of the funding for that opportunity there. Yeah, this is a tough one. Carrie did not send me any notes. And I have texted her back about 5 minutes ago and said, hey, give me projects. I know in Williamsburg they have just recently started some of their fundraising opportunities, being a newer volunteer organization, but also being a retiree community. They have really expanded on their volunteers. For a smaller hospital, they have over 100 volunteers that are there on a regular basis and really get into their fundraising opportunities. And also coming from other areas, they're able to bring ideas with them and things that would be able to support the hospital there in Williamsburg. The Gloucester community has been amazing with their fundraising, and they have very long-term volunteers that have been there for many, many, many years. They have Christmas events that have just grown every single year, and they really look forward to giving back to the community and helping that hospital grow. So you're saying, I have been sent something from them. I know it's an independent group. It is not Riverside Volunteers.
Right.
So we could certainly speak towards independent fundraising auxiliaries that still are very passionate about giving back to the hospital and they've committed $500,000 towards the building of the new facility. Volunteers at Riverside Regional are 100% customer service. And so they are able to key into the different programs through our Make a Difference funds. We have been able to support the NICView cameras in the neonatal unit, and so we have family members able to log into computers at home and watch the babies live. We've been able to add pergola over at the Cancer Center for a healing area as an outside opportunity. Most recently, I think there's been a great need for even things simple like wheelchairs at the front door. Riverside Regional is incredibly busy, and so we have great need for just additional wheelchairs and signage. And so our Make a Difference committee has been very generous in adding signs to our wheelchairs and providing additional wheelchairs. Sure. So we have numerous very dedicated volunteers. One of our questions that we ask when we interview a volunteer is, what's your passion? Where do you want to give back to your community? And many years ago, about 5 or 6 years ago, Mr. Gene Mazurek came in and said that he was a retired opera singer, and that was his gift. And he wanted to start a music program there at Riverside Regional. And so not only does he perform for us on a regular basis, but he also organizes music groups to come in for the holidays. And we have 2 concerts every day during the month of December. And then he also wanted to start a CD and used Christopher Newport students and the different organizations and put together a Christmas CD that then he donated all of the proceeds of the sales of the CD back to our Make a Difference funds. I'd say more than half of our volunteers at Riverside Regional come back to volunteer after being a patient, after being a family member. And they have seen the experience of volunteers up on the units, and they're very connected. Or they come back and say, I saw a need, and this is a need that I want to be able to fill. And whether it's advocacy at the bedside or the music programs, clerical work, they come back and say, we can put notebooks together for patient experience or for patient education reasons. We had 17 students come in this Saturday and work with Mr. Dale Church. He's our lead volunteer on our notebook project, and they put together 1,900 notebooks in 3 hours. And the patient education notebooks go to every patient in the hospital when they're admitted to help bridge that gap home. Over the years, I'd say there's probably $75,000 a year minimum that's donated from Riverside Regional. I think throughout the health system, there's well over $100,000 a year given back to the foundation through the different Make a Difference committees. But I would say in total, since I've been at Riverside for 9 years, probably over $250,000 to $300,000 from Riverside Regional. Volunteer department at Riverside Regional has also gotten very connected with all of the community engagement projects. And so working with McKinley Price, or Mayor Price, we were able to fill the trailer day for his food bank drive. And he's very connected to the community needs, of course, and so Riverside volunteers and the entire employees were all really happy to be able to support him on his food bank drive for Martin Luther King Day this year.
So Ruby Pope Drum was a very fascinating lady, a 1948 graduate of Riverside School of Professional Nursing. Her family and friends affectionately refer to her as Bunny, but she was also a lieutenant colonel in the United States Air Force. So as you can imagine, between Bunny and lieutenant colonel, a very fascinating lady. But from 20 plus years in the Air Force, she never forgot the training that she received at Riverside. and upon her death in 2004, remembered us. The former program director of the professional nursing school in 2007, sitting at her desk, received just an obscure envelope, and it was addressed to the past program director. So Debbie Sullivan Yates opens this envelope, and inside the envelope is a letter from a lawyer saying that Miss Pope Drum has passed, and she's left an award, if you will, to Riverside, and inside is a check for $1.2 million. So we got to know a little bit more about Miss Pope Drum after that, and in talking with her family, Tom Pope, her son, Cliff James, the estate, getting to know Cliff James from the estate, just talked about, again, how much Riverside and her initial nursing education meant to her, how much she was able to give back to patients through her military service, and wanted to be able to pay forward to future nurses. And she wanted that money to go towards an endowed scholarship for nursing students. And so that's what we've been able to do. Since 2007, when we started the scholarship and set it up through the foundation, we have given out almost 300 scholarships to students, totaling $600,000 in scholarship money. That I believe just makes the absolute difference in folks being able to afford education. And they've certainly been able to not take out as many student loans, and been able to become the nurses that hopefully most have been able to come work for Riverside and affect our patients. And it's just amazing what she has left in legacy in her name and to Riverside. And we're able to celebrate her every day because on the campus of Riverside College of Health Careers, we have a library dedicated to Ruby Pope Drum. So that's the name of the library on the side of the building. But when you go in, we also have the alumni room and a beautiful, beautiful portrait of Ruby Pope Drum in her Riverside cape and uniform. And you get a picture of this lovely lady back in 1948, and surrounded by her pictures of her in the Army and with her family, a picture of the letter itself that we received back in 2007, and we just really wanted to pay honor to her life and legacy in nursing. And so that as students do come in, you know, not only do they apply for a scholarship and get money, but they get to actually see the woman and the life that has given that opportunity to them. Okay?
Yeah, that was a nice part. I could tell you want to use
Just talk about that and then
Okay.
stop.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So just one normal day in 2007, the professional nursing program director, Debbie Sullivan Yates, sitting at her desk opening mail. What she thought was probably junk mail was actually addressed to the former program director. Opens this just normal white envelope, and inside is a letter from a lawyer that she'd never heard of, and a $1.2 million check. And it was from Ruby Pope Drum's estate. Okay, I've got a little bit more on the why. Why she became a nurse.
In short.
Okay.
Because we've got good content, but just this will help him. with
Okay.
editing.
Ruby Pope Drum came to Riverside Professional Nursing School actually and decided to become a nurse in 1942. And from the family stories, it was because her brother was severely injured, and that sparked her interest in nursing, and then World War II. And she decided that becoming a nurse would give her an opportunity to give back. And so her first give back was becoming a nurse. And she graduated from Riverside's Professional Nursing School in 1948 and went into the United States Air Force, first as a second lieutenant, and retired after 20 plus years as a lieutenant colonel. And I cannot imagine the number of lives she touched in the military as a nurse, and now the lives she's touched with her scholarship. Through the decades, because Riverside's nursing program has been in existence over 100 years, families and nurses that have worked for Riverside or have been touched by nurses at Riverside have created scholarships to give back in some way, and have worked with the foundation or worked with Riverside to give back in honor of their family member or their nurse, in some way to honor those who've touched their lives. That's been done through Linda Hanley's family, through the Waller family. I'm going to leave out so many. Elizabeth Buxton's family, Martin and Clarice Zuckerman. They have given multiple scholarships throughout the years, but certainly our first major gift was Ruby Pope Drum in 2007. But any of those gifts and giving through the foundation can make such a difference. So in 1990, when I was, 10 years old, Gerald, Mr. Brink, hired me into Riverside. And that's when I started with Riverside in 1990. I sat with him as an administrative intern and was hired into a full-time administrative intern position, doing whatever administrative interns needed to do, running the United Way campaign, getting set up for golf tournaments back in the day. Again, any project that needed to be done, Mr. Brink would call on the interns and externs, and we would snap to attention and do what we needed to do. But I'll never forget sitting down in that big office at Riverside Regional with Dave Tate and Mr. Brink, and having that pretty intimidating interview as a very young, just graduated college student, trying to get my first real job. And Mr. Brink hired me. So we do have quite a few nursing scholarships, and it's a wonderful thing. We need nurses, but we also have allied health programs at Riverside College of Health Careers. So we're always looking for opportunities to support our radiology, surgical tech, physical therapy, all of those students as well. And the Gerald Brink Scholarship, he was a medical lab tech. That was his discipline training, and he saw that there was a need for that allied health support, and his family has dedicated his name towards a radiology scholarship, and we were able to award the first Gerald Brink Scholarship this past fall in 2018, and that was really nice to be part of that, knowing that he hired me and I was able to be part of that first award. That was very nice. So Caroline Martin was, the iconic female woman executive vice president in place at Riverside Health System when I first started back in the 90s, and certainly was an inspiration and aspirational figure to, I think, a lot of the professional women at Riverside Health System throughout really my whole career, seen as a visionary. Whether it was her wellness work, certainly in nursing, but also with the schools and with education, and her support of not only Jean Raines and her role with the college, but also then Tracy Carmine, and certainly myself as well. Certainly appreciate all that she has done for Riverside, for nursing, and for education. Mrs. Martin was such a visionary. She had grand ideas of the way things could be, and wasn't afraid to really think out of what was happening today and what could be tomorrow, whether it was around nursing. Certainly wellness was very important to her, and then education.
Well, the story began prior to 1977, which is the year that my involvement with Riverside Walter Reed Hospital came into being. When I came along with Dr. Bob Davis and Dr. Ed Baer to Gloucester and started an internal medicine practice when the hospital opened.
Can we start over? I had to adjust the sound level.
Okay.
Just wanted to be good. Okay.
Where was I?
Start right from the beginning.
Well, the story actually begins in 1976 when I learned that there was a small community hospital being built in Gloucester, Virginia. And Dr. Bob Davis and I, residents in internal medicine at Medical College of Virginia, came down and took a look. The hospital was not yet completed, and in fact, there was a concrete slab and some superstructure, but we thought it held promise and decided to come to Gloucester in the summer of 1977, along with Dr. Ed Bayer, a nephrologist and a member of the faculty at MCV. So the three of us opened our practice about a month before the hospital opened its doors. I have been affiliated with Riverside Walter Reed ever since, so it's been quite a journey. And by virtue of that affiliation, have had the opportunity to witness all the changes that have taken place over the last few decades. The thing that's been interesting, well, there have been many interesting things about it, but it has been an interesting process. It's been an interesting journey. The hospital gradually expanded services. It did not expand the number of beds, which were, I believe, 70. Which is not surprising when one considers that medicine is undergoing a sea change and has been over these past years, and that many services have become outpatient-based that were previously in-hospital-based. The technology available to the citizens of the Middle Peninsula has grown. First there was ultrasound, then there was CT scanning, then there was MR scanning. Along with the technological growth has come a growth in the services offered in terms of specialists. Initially, there were internists, there was general surgery and ophthalmology. Subsequently, I left for 2 years and did a gastroenterology fellowship in return. So then we had gastroenterology, we added cardiology, we now have neurology, urology, and very importantly, cancer therapy. The Middle Peninsula Cancer Center opened a number of years ago offering state-of-the-art radiotherapy and medical oncology. So all of these things have evolved over a number of years, and in conjunction with that, the primary care offering has grown out from the hospital proper in the greater Middle Peninsula of Middlesex, Matthews, Gloucester, and then up into the northern neck. So these initially were independent practitioners, and now they have become part of the Riverside Medical Group. Well, I mentioned, it's interesting that you would mention Mr. Dutton because I knew him very well. I met him in 1977. He ran a local hardware store, Dutton's Hardware, on Main Street in Gloucester. We became great friends, and he subsequently became a patient of mine. Mr. Dutton was a very generous man. He was a wonderful person in every way, but he was quite generous, and he, in his bequest, Riverside received a $100,000 donation to establish the Make a Difference Fund, the J. Doswell Dutton Make a Difference Fund. So it really started in the Middle Peninsula as a result of the generosity of one individual. It has grown over the years as a result of the generosity of the community at large, many different people. Well, there are myriad ways in which this generosity benefits the Middle Peninsula. And I will share a few of those, but it would be difficult to be all-inclusive. I'm sure I'll leave something out. There is the Family Care Center in the hospital near the intensive care unit. This is a place for families of patients to rest, to collect themselves. It is stocked with a small kitchenette with things like snacks and beverages, and it has a shower. And it's used not just by families who have loved ones in the intensive care unit, but by other folks who may have loved ones in the hospital. There is that. There is the Shirley Spain Healing Garden. I want to say a little bit about that because I think that's a very important thing. You know, we think of health care, so often we think of it as sticks and bricks, a hospital, but really health care is so much more than that. And healing is a multifaceted process. There's physical healing, there's mental healing, there's spiritual healing, and they all conflate to result in healing of the individual. And the Shirley Spain Healing Garden has been made possible through the generosity of Mr. Steve Spain and his family. His mother made that journey through the treatment of cancer, and she's gone on now, but her memory lives, and this garden is in honor of that memory. So how does that play in healing? Well, treatment of cancer is often a journey. It's not a one-and-done thing. There are ups, there are downs. It's a process that goes on for a period of time, and sometimes that period lasts for years. Spiritual healing, contentment is an important part of dealing with that process. And this is a place where people can go and reflect, where families can go, can find peace, place that's quiet, place that's close to nature. And I can't overemphasize the importance of that. You know, there was an expression, we don't hear it much anymore, unfortunately, but it's still as true as it ever was, and it is the art and science of medicine. Well, this is part of the art of medicine, and we don't want to ever lose sight of that because that is an important part of the equation that results in healing. Now, there are other benefits. One would be, for example, I'll just give you a practical example. A patient comes to the emergency room at 2 a.m. in an ambulance. It is determined that they do not require hospitalization, and yet they have no family and they have no friends they can call, and they have no resources to get home. And this fund can then, and does, pay for a way home. Pay the cost, and hospital employees will make the arrangements. Another example, and this is really important, patients may leave the hospital and lack the sufficient funds to purchase their discharge medications. Studies have shown that a failure to obtain the discharge medications at the time result in a high recidivism rate. These folks often end up back in the emergency room, back in the hospital. The funds can be utilized for that purpose, to purchase those medications and get them off on the right foot, if you will. Other things include the funding of golf carts on the campus in the Middle Peninsula to assist family and patients to go from here to there. The bigger we get, the more we need those. We've particularly needed them recently because of a large construction project in Gloucester. Another would be, for example, charging stations. Everybody seems to have a device these days, and oftentimes more than one. So this is funded. So those are some examples.
It's wonderful that you knew him so personally.
Well, Oswald was one of those people that brightened your day. You know, every physician knows what I'm talking about when I say that you look at your list of patients for the day, and some lighten your heart and some others, well, not so much. Mr. Dutton was one of those folks that I always enjoyed seeing, and in fact, it was probably unfair to the patient that followed him because we utilized some of that individual's time we always love to talk about this, that, and the other. And I'll share a story with you because it really exemplifies his personality. Doswell was a gentleman who had a store in the courthouse, and he early on, Pittsburgh Paint came to him and said they would like to run a line of Pittsburgh paints out of Dutton Hardware. And they wanted him to be advertised as a paint specialist. And Doswell said he knew nothing of paint. And they said not to worry, if there's any problem, they'll send a representative down to help him out. So it wasn't long after he became the paint expert for Gloucester County that a gentleman who owns a farm known as Belleville Farm called and said he wanted to buy paint to paint all the buildings, including the houses on Belleville Farm. Well, Doswell was in a panic because Belleville Farm is a very old place, has two houses. The first was constructed, a part of it was constructed in the early 18th century, frame house, big, wings, another house on the property, complex, many outbuildings, two large barns, and Doswell had no idea how much paint this would require. So he, in a fever, he called Pittsburgh Paints. They sent a man down. They drove out to Belleville, and sitting in the car, the gentleman pulled out a bottle of Jack Daniels and 2 paper cups, poured them each a large shot of whiskey. Doswell was a teetotaler, but in the interest of collegiality, he drank it down. The gentleman had a legal pad, and periodically he'd write something down on a legal pad, did not get out of the car. And periodically he'd pour another shot of whiskey. This went on for about 2 hours. Doswell said he wasn't exactly sure where he was at that point, having never consumed alcohol before, and pretty soon the bottle was empty. The man got out of the car and stood in the yard for about 2 or 3 minutes and jotted some things down on a legal pad, did not go anywhere close to any of the buildings. So when, at this point, Doswell, even though he was inebriated, he was worried, and he said, well, we need to know how much paint to order. The guy wrote a number on the bottom of the sheet, drew a circle around it, handed it to him. He said, that many gallons. So Doswell and this gentleman had trouble getting back to Gloucester, even though it was 3 miles, and Doswell had lived there all his life, but they made it. And that was his first and last experience with the Devil's Brew. I don't know if it was the effects or the after effects that cured any interest in any future imbibing. But at any rate, he ordered the paint, and it came, and he got a call from Mr. Westmark, the man that owned Belleville Farm, a few weeks later. Told him, he said it was remarkable. He said they painted everything and they had 1 quart left over. And it was so funny that about once a year I'd ask Doswell to tell the story over again, and he and I'd both laugh about it. It was like deja vu all over again. And then when he retired, he was a volunteer at Riverside Walter Reed for many years. He was a pleasant, wonderful man, and it is so appropriate that a man who gave so much during his lifetime would continue giving through his legacy donation. So I was very fond of him, as were we all.
That's an awesome story. That is an awesome story. Can you share some reflections or thoughts about Steve Spain and his continuous and generous support of the Middle Peninsula community?
From what I know of Mr. Spain, and I don't know him like I know him, but I don't know him well, he is a remarkable man. From everything I've heard, he's a remarkable businessman, and he's a man who's remarkable for his generosity. Not only does he support us through his generous donation that brought the Shirley Spain Healing Garden to reality, but he serves as a sponsor of our Tree of Lights event yearly. This past December, it was at Little England. It was, I can tell you it was absolutely fabulous. It is so important in terms of encouraging generosity among others, and in terms of getting the word out regarding what is made available to the citizens of the Middle Peninsula through Riverside. Well, Mr. Spain has a big part in that. It is my understanding that he and his family contribute to other worthwhile activities as well. So I've heard nothing but the finest things about him.
He's really quite remarkable. Your thoughts and reflections on Riverside physicians who have helped care for the community on the Middle Peninsula. They are one of our honoree groups, physicians in general.
Well, you know, healthcare is really a multifaceted endeavor. It requires physicians, but it also requires nurses, nurse practitioners, physician's assistants, inhalation therapists, and all of the others that I'm going to leave someone out, so I'll stop right there. All the other folks that make up the healthcare team. But the captain of the team, pretty much, the quarterback, is a physician. One of the things that I'm particularly proud of with regard to Riverside is, and we're probably not different from other organizations in this way, but it's the renewed emphasis on quality. You know, quality is one of those things that's, it's easy to appreciate it when you're in its presence or the beneficiary. It's a bit more difficult to quantitate it. We're learning how to quantitate it, and we are endeavoring to keep the quality at a level of the state of the art. And that's a challenge. It's a challenge. We have very good and dedicated physicians. Physicians are kind of like any employee, person. There are several things to consider when considering effectiveness. One is, does one have the intelligence to do the job? The other is, does one have the heart to do the job? And frankly, healthcare, most of practice in medicine is not rocket science. It's pretty simple. The day-to-day stuff is mundane. You know, we don't see the fascinomas, we used to call them, very often. We generally see stuff that we've seen many times before. So the heart is so important. The commitment to being compulsive about following up with things that one does is so important. And I do believe that the group of physicians that we have in the Middle Peninsula are very good at that. I think they're committed and from my experience, quite excellent in their chosen fields. And in fact, I can speak personally because I have had surgery at the Middle Peninsula. I could have gone anywhere. I went there. If I have surgery in the future, I intend to go there. I have an ophthalmologist. He's in the Middle Peninsula across from the hospital. I've recently had some minor surgery done at Walter Reed. And I might add, I had heart surgery 14 years ago, and it was done at Riverside, only because we don't do heart surgery at Walter Reed. And I could have gone anywhere. In fact, somebody said, well, why don't you go into the Cleveland Clinic? And I said to myself, how many patients have I referred to the Cleveland Clinic? And the answer was 2, because they wanted to go there. But I'd sent many to Riverside. And I said, if I would send my patients there, then I would be willing to go there myself. And if I was not, I shouldn't be sending my patients there. So the physicians, it's a long answer to your question, but the physicians in the Middle Peninsula and in the Riverside system, by and large, are quite competent and committed, in my opinion. And I know many of them very well.
Other honorees?
Well, I have some thoughts. One would be on Rick Pierce and
I'd love for you to talk a bit about Mr. Pierce.
Rick Pierce and Jerry Brink. And the reason I want to mention those two is they were CEOs of the Riverside Health System. One of the things that has been a real blessing for the Middle Peninsula, frankly, has been the leadership of administration. And as a matter of fact, one of our previous administrators was Mr. Bill Downey, who's now the CEO of Riverside Health Systems. That leadership should never be undervalued because it's so important. And we have been, the health system has been very fortunate to have very competent people. We had Mr. Lou St. Clair, who was in the driver's seat, and I know we lost him recently, but then that came Mr. Brink, and he carried on a wonderful tradition of excellence, Then Rick Pierce, who, by the way, lives in the Middle Peninsula. Rick had the good common sense to come across the water to the land of the life worth living. And so he's practically a neighbor. And he carried on with a great job. And they put good people in charge at our hospital in the Middle Peninsula. And we, Dr. Bob Davis and Bob and I started together and we're still very close. Always felt that the hospital enjoyed excellent leadership from top down. And so those folks, I'm sorry, Jerry's left us now. Mr. Brink has gone on. But we owe them a great deal, and we shouldn't lose sight of it. You know, it's kind of reminds me of, to quote Winston Churchill, and he was talking about countries, but you could say this about organizations, and that is, he said, a country that does not remember its past has no future. And I think that an organization such as ours that does not remember its past, you could say the same thing. So we need to keep those folks in mind.
Very good.
Great.
Thank you so much, Dr. Crowder.
Am I free now?
You are free.
Fall of 2011. It started when I got a letter from her attorney indicating that she'd made a very large gift to the center. And as I looked at it, I did not know her previously, and so obviously I was very curious. So I got in touch with her, and this is what I found out. She had been someone who had received services from the center in prior years, and she thought that the provision of our service was very significant and instrumental in her maintaining wellness and independence. And she wanted to do something to prolong our ability to keep doing it. So she gave us a very large gift that continues to this day, 8 years later. And we got that gift at a really crucial time in our existence. I can't overstate the importance of how that gift has allowed us to stay open and sustain ourselves and to continue to provide those services that she benefited from and she values. I meet with her several times a year because she wants to know how we're doing. And we speak in great detail about how her gift, in fact, serves the center, but more importantly, serves the people in Greater Williamsburg. But many of the services that we provide struggle to, in fact, create a margin of profit. So without the generosity of individuals like Dr. McKinney and her family, it would be impossible for us to continue to provide certain services, like the geriatric assessment clinic, like the driving rehabilitation clinic that she supported. So it really did fill in the difference between what our revenues created and what our expenses were. And in getting to know Dr. McKinney, we've had her come visit the office many times, and we decided, I think it was about 5 years ago, that the size of her gift did indeed merit that we named the program after her. So we now call the Driving Rehabilitation Program the Jane D. McKinney Driving Rehabilitation Program. We had a wonderful ceremony at the office. Our medical director was there. Our vice president of Riverside Health System was there. We spoke. We presented her a plaque. There is a plaque to this day in our lobby that has her name and some thoughts about how much we appreciate what she did, but maybe more importantly, what she continues to do for us. And I'm sure she'll continue. Well, you know, in our business of serving older adults, we think a lot about legacy. So what are we leaving long after the point we're involved? And so many of the services that we provide simply cannot be provided without generosity and vision by people like Dr. McKinney. And some of the examples I would give you would be, we operate a program called Caring for You, Caring for Me, which is a program created by the Rosalind Carter Institute. And it provides services for caregivers in sessions that are 2 hours a week for 5 weeks. And we do this in an ongoing fashion. We also provide services for caregivers of veterans who are returning from combat in the Middle East, and also a program of the Rosalind Carter Institute. But these programs in and of themselves do not generate sufficient revenue to be sustained over the long term. So as we think about legacy, as we think about meeting the needs of our community, it's important that we reach out to people like Dr. McKinney and others who see what we do and it resonates with them and they decide they want to be a part of it. So throughout our 17-year history at the center, a number of individuals and groups and families have looked at the remarkable services that we provide, and they've been individually affected by them. And in their vision and their generosity, they've wanted to do anything they could to help us sustain those services over the long term. And obviously that's what we want to say to the community, is that you can benefit from these services, you will see the value of these services, and we hope that you too will decide to make a difference, much the way Dr. McKinney did. So because of the wonderful generosity of many donors who have supported Riverside and the center for so long, we get to continue to provide these very remarkable and distinguished services to older adults and their caregivers. And we are so grateful, and we really look forward to continuing those relationships.
Riverside in Williamsburg has long been a go-to source for medical needs from the Williamsburg community to the Newport News campus. And when Williamsburg Community Hospital ceased to exist in the late 1990s, Dr. Mark Ellis and a number of others in the community looked to establish a Riverside presence in Williamsburg. And the community was very enthusiastically involved in the Certificate of Public Need process. Dr. Ellis and his warm connections to many of his current and former patients and the community in general really stirred up a great deal of interest in a Riverside product, a facility in the Williamsburg area, and that's how Riverside Doctors Hospital came to be after the Certificate of Public Need was granted. The building has been in place for a number of years, and having that physical presence at the intersection of Route 60 East and Route 199 has given the community a tangible evidence of the Riverside care difference in our community. You know, shortly after 2014, one of our many terrific Riverside Doctor Hospital volunteers, Nancy Bates, approached us about a gift, a significant gift, to create the Healing Garden in memory of her husband, Jim. And that was the first significant gift to Riverside Doctors Hospital and the Riverside Foundation. And it has created that healing garden in his memory. The Bates Family Garden has created a wonderful respite for patients and their families, and a real enhancement to the facility at Riverside Doctors Hospital. A couple of years later, in 2016, we added the Tree of Life plaques in our lobby. That's been a terrific presence to remind folks of the significance of philanthropy. Folks can make gifts in memory of a loved one and to honor a caregiver, and it simply raises the bar as to the visibility of philanthropy at our facility. Additional gifts to the Riverside Foundation from our Riverside Doctors Hospital constituents has enabled us to provide a number of wonderful amenities, including a medical mannequin named Annie that was gifted by one of our volunteers, and that helps staff in training procedures. Another gift support has helped us with cancer supplies and transportation to our patients who are receiving care in the community. That type of support has been phenomenal for our audience, as has our comfort cart that our volunteers take around the facility at Doctors Hospital. It contains books and crossword puzzles and other amenities for our guests and their families. That type of support has enabled those amenities in the facility. Volunteers at Riverside Doctors Hospital are one of the first faces that our guests and their families see and encounter and interact with upon entering the facility. I believe strongly in the presence of volunteers. Not only do they help these patients, their families, but they also really cement the Riverside care difference. So many of these folks opt to be there. Not only do they provide resources of time and talent, many of them provide philanthropic support, but they are often the first face that many of our patients see, and they provide care in a very warm and welcoming way that I think helps set the tone for the Riverside Care Difference at Doctors Hospital. Dr. Mark Ellis was one of the leading citizens of Williamsburg. It was a pleasure to know him and to see him interact not only with his patients but also with his fellow citizens. He, initially through Williamsburg Community Hospital, set the bar fairly high as far as a caring, compassionate physician. He continued that certainly with his involvement with Riverside and Doctors Hospital and its establishment. His manner, his bedside manner, his professionalism, and certainly his expertise are remarkable and are missed sorely in the community. He really has been was a wonderful ambassador for Riverside throughout Williamsburg. Sorry, that sounds goofy.
No, that's good.
It's hard to speak about someone whose presence was so big but who's no longer here. You know, you go past tense and but you still feel their presence around. The physicians at Riverside Doctors Hospital, through a number of interactions, obviously in the facility and throughout the Williamsburg market, but also in many of the seminars and on-site conferences that we have, I think again demonstrate the care difference of Riverside physicians and the whole Riverside product. Not only are these professionals remarkably gifted in their work, but they also have tremendous people skills, I've found. I hear that as a volunteer board member throughout the Williamsburg community, the Riverside physicians, the staff, the whole product, there is this emphasis on care and really listening to the patient and her or his family members. And I think that distinguishes our physicians at Riverside Doctors Hospital from others in the area.
Somehow your head shifted this way.
Oh, sorry.
And there was a glare
Okay.
that was there that wasn't there before, and
All
that
right.
was a really good piece that, I don't want to have all of a sudden, I get...
Oh man,
come
I'm
back to
sorry.
us. No, it's okay. Come back to us this way.
Okay.
There we go. Yeah, okay. Okay, that's fine. That was
These
all.
glasses are supposed to be non-glare. But
Well, I adjusted the lights a little bit to
Okay.
avoid that, but that
Okay.
one I think you just shifted and it...
Sorry.
No, it's okay. How would you know?
for someone who usually speaks with his hands and does all this, I'm doing my best to
That's
try.
right. But that was just a nice piece. I'd hate to not be able to use it because it was a little off.
Can you read this? I know you're
Give
not
me the
good at
question
it.
again, and I'll do my best.
General reflections on the value that Riverside physicians bring to the Williamsburg community.
The physicians of Riverside in the Williamsburg community and at Riverside Doctors Hospital bring a great deal of value and a great deal of quality to our entire market. I have heard from a number of patients and their families as a volunteer board member how significantly impacted their patients, their loved ones, have felt by the skill and the manner of the physicians. Not only are these individuals remarkably gifted technically and expert-wise, but they also carry great compassionate skills. And I think that distinguishes physicians at Riverside Doctors Hospital and throughout the Riverside market in Williamsburg from other physicians that are affiliated elsewhere. It makes a big difference. I've enjoyed knowing Karamine Kellum through my mutual involvement with her on the Riverside Health System Board. Clearly her compassion about health care on Virginia's Eastern Shore is evident through the new facility, and only she was very involved in a lot of things, both in Northampton County and Accomack County, where I had the privilege of growing up, and what's there now speaks highly of her expertise and compassion for fellow shore residents. Conway Shield I got to know as well through the Riverside Health System Board. He has long been a significant advocate for health care in Newport News and in Virginia's peninsula. His compassion for the Riverside product and for the community of which he's a part sets him at a high place in this community. That sounds stupid. I don't know how else to say that. Conway Shield has long been an advocate and an active player in his community in a number of organizations, and my working with him on the Riverside Health System Board certainly brought that to light. It has been wonderful to have him leading the Riverside Foundation in a number of ways, and his involvement in other organizations helps raise the profile of Riverside Foundation, given his expertise and commitment to the entire peninsula area, of which he's long been an important part.
Our volunteers are the first touch point as our patients, our visitors.
Start over again.
Sure, no problem.
Your level here a little bit.
Okay. Our volunteers are the first touch points our community members have as they approach the hospital. Our volunteer information desk is the first desk that you approach as you walk into the facility. So we have several hospitality volunteers that sit at our front desk when people walk in the front door, and our volunteers meet and greet each person that walk in the front door, and they are our wayfinders for the facility. The volunteers are our soundboard for the hospital and for the foundation. They give awareness to our Riverside Foundation throughout the community. Our volunteers, we had 10 initially on the Riverside Williamsburg Foundation that were all volunteers on our board. So when we first established the Williamsburg Foundation board, our first administrator, Steve McCary, asked that they all be our Riverside volunteers. And that was great because we were able to come up with projects through the community and for the Williamsburg region based on what the volunteers' needs assessment were. Absolutely. Our volunteers, when we first opened the hospital, we had 30 applicants that were there before I was even hired, which was remarkable. The community were so excited about Dr. Ellis's legacy that they had signed up before we even opened the doors for Riverside. So when we had our 8 opening events, we had volunteers that were already signed up and ready to go before I was even hired, which was thrilling to have all of our volunteers so excited about our new community hospital that they were there showing the community around with over 2,000 visitors that came through on all of those opening events. And many of them are still here today, 6 years later, and many of them were treated by Dr. Ellis. Nancy came to us not long after her spouse had died. Nancy really was home with her husband for many years after his retirement. They retired to Williamsburg from New Jersey. They spent many years together in Ford's Colony. They golfed together. They enjoyed a robust retirement. They have a wonderful family. They have 3 girls, and they gave a lot to the Williamsburg community. Nancy was actually a volunteer in New Jersey at a hospital, so she was very familiar with volunteering in a hospital setting. When her husband, Jim, died, unfortunately, she was in her house really enjoying her retirement in the Williamsburg Landing, but really was very sad and really missed her husband and didn't really get out very much. Nancy decided to give back to the community and looked at Riverside, and came to our volunteer programming and interviewed with me and felt a love for Riverside, and decided to volunteer. And it was her first real outing into the community. She immediately became connected with other volunteers on her Tuesday afternoon shift with our wonderful Judy Meehan, who took her under her wing, and other volunteers, and it really becomes a family setting. Not only is our hospital a family setting, but our volunteer corps. Nancy established friendships right away, and she has said to me it really had saved her life because she really didn't get out very often. So Nancy has become bonded with our volunteers and myself, and several of our team members call her Fancy Nancy because she actually, from head to toe, matches everything. Her earrings, her shoes, her outfits. She has quite a collection of shoes and clothing that are all color coordinated. So Nancy established a great friendship with all the other volunteers and comes in every Tuesday afternoon to volunteer. And really, it was her first outing after her husband had died. So every Tuesday, we expect her. Her volunteering very, very much. And in honor of her husband, Jim, who had died at Riverside Regional Medical Center back in 2011, Nancy, along with her daughter Barbara, Allison, and Susan, decided to donate to the Riverside Foundation in honor of Jim by establishing the Bates Memorial Garden, which is on the side of our building. It's a lovely garden for our patients and our visitors and our family members to go and sit at. Nancy was a huge gardener herself and absolutely loves birds. At her house in Williamsburg Landing, she has multiple bird feeders. She has birds. She actually wears these little birdie earrings all the time that we love, little bluebirds. So they established that garden for our hospital, and it's a beautiful memorial garden for Jim. And actually, we have beautiful teak benches that have all of her children's name on, and as well as Jim's. So that's a beautiful memorial to her husband, Jim, and to Nancy. She established that. I don't remember what year. Hopefully Liz can throw that in there. I'm sorry to say that. She established that initially. And then also for our Riverside Foundation, she established an education fund. Education was always very, very important to the Bates family, and it was not an if they were going to college, it was where they were going to college in the Bates family. We've also formed a very, very strong relationship with her daughter, Barbara. I'm in communication with Barbara all the time regarding Nancy. Nancy will tell me she's going on vacation, and I will follow up with her daughter, Barbara, to find out what day she's going on vacation, where she's going. And so I'm always emailing Barbara, who's in Atlanta, to find out what Nancy's up to. If Nancy doesn't eat enough of her lunch, I call Barbara. Nancy doesn't like that she has another mother along with her daughter, Barbara. She has me. Okay. So the Bates Memorial Garden was dedicated May 8th, 2015. Her daughter Barbara came to join us with that dedication. It was a beautiful, lovely spring afternoon we had out in the garden right around Mother's Day, and her daughter Barbara was in town. I have the pleasure of working with wonderful volunteers that have been here since 2013 when we opened the hospital. Our volunteers, I am fortunate because our volunteers give their gift of time, their most precious gift. We have volunteers that are bankers, accountants, attorneys, and I'm so fortunate that they are willing to give us their gift and also serve on many boards throughout the community. If you're interested in learning any more about our foundation and our quest to support remarkable care, we'd greatly appreciate it. I have the best job in the world, and I have the great fortune of working with our volunteers who love to be at Riverside Doctors Hospital every day. It is the best job in the world.
So W.M. Jordan's been very active in the community for as long as I've been there, and prior to my being there, but I've been there for over 30 years. Our philosophy is to give back to those that give to us. And I think we've done that in a very big way in this community. I mean, it's we obviously, as you all know, we contribute a lot to Riverside. We contribute a lot to a lot of the foundations and businesses actually in Newport News and in Hampton Roads proper. Okay, from what I understand about Riverside, our history with Riverside Regional Medical Center is we have worked with y'all since 1958. We've worked in the same areas that we've taken spaces that were once something and recreated them into something else. Our latest two projects were the Pavilion Project and, hold on, what was the second project called? We did the main entrance, and we did the first part of the pavilion, and then we did the Pavilion Project. Now it's called the Tower. Yes. So we did the Pavilion expansion first. Okay. In recent history, the first major project that we did was a $50 million addition to, it was the main entrance and the emergency department. So we recreated those spaces and a lot of back spaces in that too. And then we just finished the Tower Project, which kind of takes the main entrance of the facility and turns it slightly and gives a different patient flow through the facility. But our history with y'all is since 1958. I've heard stories from Bob Lawson, John's father, about working near operating suites and driving piles. And the doctors and Bob having to work together where they would stop the pile driving operation long enough for them to do the operation, their operation, and then we would start pile driving again. So we've got a very close working relationship with Riverside. So I've heard stories from Bob Lawson, John Lawson's dad, of when we would have a pile driving operation going on, and the doctors would be performing operations inside, and so we would have to stop driving piles so that they could do their operation, and then when they finished, we would start driving piles again. So as I said, we've got a long-standing relationship with Riverside Regional. John Lawson has been very active in the community, as you know, always has been. Again, he has always believed in giving back to those that give to us. And we've had a long-standing relationship with Riverside, so that's one of the reasons that we gave the $100,000 for the medical simulation lab. Thank you. As you all know, he's ran a lot of campaigns. He ran the capital campaign for Virginia Tech a few years back, and he just recently ran CNU's capital campaign where they exceeded goal by over $20 million. So again, he just believes in giving to his community, and he believes strongly in this community. He loves where he lives, and he wants to make Newport News and Riverside Regional as successful as they can be. So I've known Diana for, oh my God, over 30 years. I met Diana when she worked for Centera, Hampton, and did a lot of projects there with her. And then when she moved over here, we had the privilege of working with her again. She's a consummate professional. You always know where you stand with Diana. She's fair, honest, can handle a lot of different pressures. I mean, I knew that not only was she running construction, she seemed like she ran everything in the hospital that wasn't medically oriented at one point in time, and was able to balance that in a really good way. So I've enjoyed that relationship and working with her over all these years. So if you don't mind, so Diana, when y'all did start your foundation, Diana called me and introduced me to your foundation director right off the bat, to see if there was a way that we could all start working together for the foundation. And then she stayed in touch with us throughout time to help us work with the foundation. And Golden is a lot like, Golden's a great lady. She's class act. I got to work with her when she was the administrator at Riverside Regional. And we wanted to do the on-curtain, off-curtain, on-stage, off-stage. And so during that process of the programming for Riverside, she talked to us about the Newport News Free Clinic and asked if there was a way that we could be involved in that with her. And they had a building that they wanted, so we went down and looked at the building, and basically we did an in-kind donation of where we built it out for Golden, and I understand it's very successful still today. W.M. Jordan is very committed to the community and to Riverside Regional and to all the other great assets that we have on the peninsula. The universities, the shipyard, we have 2 of 17 national labs located right here on the peninsula. But we can't do everything ourselves. We need the support of the community and all the major employers in the community to help us continue the support for Riverside Regional.
Golden and I grew up in what is now called the southeast part of Newport News. So this is home for us. We went to elementary, high school in that part of the city, and our involvement in the community has been driven by value systems that are much alike. And those value systems have to do with service to the community, assisting and helping wherever we possibly can. And we came together with that notion that we would do as much as we could for the community that gave us so much. Having been born and essentially reared in the southeast part of Newport News, we were keenly aware and reminded every day of the needs of the community. For those who don't know that part of the city, is populated mostly by people of African descent. And one real fact that we consciously live with all the time is that black people live sicker and die younger than any other ethnic group in the United States. We know that, and because of that, we made a commitment to do as much as we could to reverse, or at least close the gap and reverse the trends. So as a result of that, the clinic became a reality as we began to focus on what was necessary to address that gap. And that's how the clinic actually came about. That's a fascinating question, and that the gifts issue came about primarily because we were seasoned and mature people. We were in our 60s when we got married. And as a result of that, we had accumulated most of what people will accumulate in a lifetime, having 2 successful 32-year marriages with other people. Our reality was, okay, what can we do as a result of our going forward that would continue to share our thoughts and love for the community? So as a result of that, we decided that the gifts that people might want to give would either go to the Community Free Clinic or the Hampton Roads Prostate Health Forum, a 501c3 organization that Riverside also was very involved in helping to establish. We established that in 2007. The clinic is located at 727 25th Street in Newport News. We opened the doors in November of 2010, and we have been serving a number of folk. At 2 times in 2013, we had as many as 2,000 patients that we were serving at that time. Right now, we provide medical, dental, and medications for those who attend or come for care at the clinic. And we have a number of doctors who volunteer their services who are Riverside physicians, either retired or still working, who actually come and provide their services. Of course. Right now, the Riverside physicians who actually are fully engaged include Dr. James Mixon, a primary care physician who's still practicing, Dr. Mark Clark, who's a retired cardiologist. He comes in every week and he sees patients as aggressively and as completely as he did when he was in private practice, because he was my cardiologist, so I know that. And our medical director is also an active Riverside physician whose name I don't remember right now, so you can't use that. But they've been engaged. When we looked for a site in the southeast area, we discovered a building not far from the church that we worship on 25th Street, and that this building was sitting there. And we took a look at it. It was in horrible condition. And we got some estimates on what it would cost to repair it and bring it up to par. And the numbers were just beyond our ability to respond to favorably anyway. And along came Johnny Lawson. Along came the family, and we said to them, we can open this building if you can provide some assistance. Johnny Lawson sent a team of people to take a look at the building. They made some adjustments and made some estimates and came back and said, this is what we would think it would take to bring the building up and to be ready to open. We didn't have the money to do that at that time, so the gift that came from the Lawson family amounted to $513,000, and that was critical to get the building up to code and ready for use. Golden is a compassionate, caring, and expressive person. For those who really know her, they know that she. You can feel it. If you're near her, you can feel how caring she is, and she doesn't hesitate to express that. As a result of that, she wants everyone. Certainly, when we started the clinic, she wanted everyone to have the benefits that they would get if they walked into regional or any other well-run part of the organization. That was not present in the community where we opened the doors. So it's her compassion and her caring and wanting to transport that feel from regional to 25th Street and Newport News actually was a driving force. And it continues to be a driving force as people now become eligible for the expanded Medicaid. Some don't want to leave the clinic primarily because that touch, that feel, knowing that they really are welcome and there are people there who are interested in caring for and taking care of them. So that's all golden. Well, I think there continues to be a need for health care available in communities where people are not as likely to travel to for any number of reasons to get care. So one of the unique characteristics of the clinic is in walking distance to many of the people who are served. So access is facilitated by proximity, and that becomes extremely important. If you think about how far you have to go, depending on where you live, to get to regional, that's a challenge. It's a lot different for someone who lives 2 or 3 blocks over who can walk in with a health problem and get attention versus someone who has to either ride the bus, Uber if they can, or get someone to take them. And that becomes a barrier that gets in the way of folk receiving health care. So location is extremely important, and I would hope that those who look at the grand schemes and designs of the city and services remember where you have pockets of people who may not have ready and easy transportation. If you really want to touch them, you need to provide the service close to them. McKinley Price and I were in high school together. I'm a little older, maybe a lot older than McKinley. However, one of the things that I know about McKinley is his love for the community. I know and knew his older brother better because we were closer in age. But I know that McKinley cares deeply about the community, cares deeply about Riverside, cares deeply about the clinic. He was the first dentist who walked into the doors at the Community Free Clinic and offered his services. Now, he was still mayor, and he was doing his own practice as well, and he came there because we wanted to deliver dental care for people, many people who had not, as adults, had not been to a dentist. And so we were trying to close the gap on need and the services required to bring up the quality of mouth care and dental care and hygiene. McKinley also donated monies from his golf tournament to the clinic, and he was a key fundraiser for us to help keep the lights on and keep the doors open. My message continues to be built on a value system which says it really does matter to have a healthy community. If you believe that it matters to have a healthy community, then the community needs to be engaged. From all parts of the community, there needs to be all of the support, including financial support, of course, to make that a reality. Healthy communities seem to me to perform and deliver a better and a higher quality of life and living. I just completed some work recently. The theme was adding years to your life and adding life to your years. This was the recent theme at the School of Nursing at Hampton University. Think about that. Add years to your life and add life to your years. That speaks to having a focus on community and what's needed to raise the bar in terms of health care. And so philanthropy is critical to that. And it can make a huge difference between being okay and being great. Oftentimes we do not talk about the economic impact of being sick. We skirt the issue. If you have healthy and productive citizens, you're likely to have a more productive community because they're able to work, they're able to spend the resources, the money they earn when they work, and the community benefits as well as all who interact with folk in that particular community. So a healthy community is in fact a productive community, and my training is in economics, and I don't believe that we've realized, acted upon how important that reality is. That when people are sick, they're not productive. And when they're not productive, their talent, their gifts, and all of the contributions that they bring forward just are not put into the pot, and we don't get any return on what they might know, what they may feel, what they might be able to do. They're just lost, either temporarily and unfortunately permanently in many cases.
Sure. As far as Jimmy's parents go, regarding their unfortunate issues with their cancer, both were both treated through Riverside's cancer facility. His mother being treated first, very pleased with her care throughout the treatment phases of that, not only as far as with the oncologist care, but also as far as the nursing care that was given as far as coming out to the house as well. He was very appreciative of that. Subsequently, she passed all that and moved on to continue living a good life. And then unfortunately his daddy, his father, James Sr., subsequently had developed a terminal type illness of cancer that Riverside was able to step in and help treat. He got involved very closely with our Riverside Oncology group, and they were able to offer him some more of comfort measures. Unfortunately, his cancer was diagnosed late in its phase, and Mr. Bain, Jimmy was very pleased with his care as well throughout the entire process from the time he was diagnosed, and subsequently he had passed within a year of that diagnosis, but they as well came out to the house, did a lot of great comfort care, not only for Mr. Bain himself, but for the children as well. And it was after that, I think that that's when Jimmy decided he thought he needed to do something to kind of return the favor, so to speak, on the great care that both his parents received regarding their cancer, and trying to contribute to the Riverside Cancer Foundation. Most definitely, Mark, I was never had the opportunity to meet Dr. Ellis personally on a working basis, but for him setting up this foundation, I think was a great vision. And for Mr. Bain, for Jimmy, I want to be able to contribute as graciously as he has and has continued to help generate this fund up to the goal that Dr. Ellis had wanted to originally obtain it to $1 million. That in itself has been very helpful for our Riverside family to offer the integrative care to our cancer patients that otherwise would never receive that type of care. And it speaks volumes as far as what we can do outside of a reimbursement model to give this care that's not only needed for the patient itself, but also for the family. And and it's great to see that this endowment is still growing, and we have people like Jimmy who are willing to contribute not only his personal finances, but on a corporate level as well to as much contribution that he has. And we're very blessed to have Mr. Jimmy as well as other individuals in this community to step up and do that. Otherwise, this vision that Dr. Ellis had would not be. Yeah, sure, I will. Speaking again, as far as with the Dr. Ellis endowment, when he if you go back and look, his vision was try to reach that endowment into $1 million level and above range to offer the integrative services to our Riverside patients and their families. And people like Jimmy, who have able to step up and do such that, to not only contribute on a personal financial measures, but on a corporate level, to keep this fund where it is and continue to grow, speaks volumes. I mean, if you knew Jimmy, he's a great guy, and you would never know the man as far as what he has contributed to this community. He's a very gracious man. I'm fortunate to say he's a close personal friend, but he has done a lot for us and continues. The gentleman just keeps on contributing, which I think is great. And we have other people in the community that do that as well. And I think Dr. Ellis is smiling down on us because his endowment is growing strong, and more importantly, the people who are benefited are the people that he intended. Well, I was fortunate. I came here as a medical student, an intern back in 1995. At that time, the Riverside Family Practice Facility, of which being one of the oldest in the country, I was fortunate enough to be accepted into their class of 12. At that time, Riverside was still on the breaking edge of just trying to incorporate primary care as a group. They were trying to acquire more and more physicians to come aboard and join their program. So I guess from the very beginning, that's where I started everything. I started as a Riverside physician, so I know no different, but I've been honored to be surrounded by such a great group of physicians as specialists, not only as mentors, but as close personal friends as well. And through the years, I've built these relationships with these guys and gals, and from that, have been able to form a very tight group that has helped me be successful at my field of medicine, as well as to be able to call upon them with no reservations whatsoever. I've been fortunate to be honored numerous years now for being one of our area top docs, and the only reason that is because of what support staff I have, which is our other Riverside docs. So a lot of times I get people say, well, how do you feel with this award? I'm like, well, you're only as good as your support staff. And that is one thing I think that Riverside has a great capability of, is that our support staff is strong, from our nurses all the way down to our other support staff, as well as our physicians. And they're on the cutting edge. I mean, we're very fortunate to have Riverside here in our community. I can speak on and on about different cases of patients that have benefited from our specialists that need to go off to the tertiary facilities for further care because they got it here. And that's reassuring to be able to sit in your backyard and know that these guys are here waiting for you. So I guess in a lot of ways I'm very blessed to be a part of Riverside, and I am
Hugely important to.
right.
Maybe
Yeah.
Is
that what you get? Some more specifics?
So
Okay.
maybe it's kind of a continuation of what
Yeah.
you've already said, but sort of kind of launching the next chapter in a way.
Yeah, we can go back to that. Sure.
Okay.
Ready? Okay. Regarding further discussion with the endowment fund that has been set up by Dr. Ellis, he specifically had set up this fund for the integrative side of medicine, which basically is the side that the insurances and that won't step up and pay for, such as pet therapy, offering assistance outside the realm of the hospital, as far as arranging for other family members to be able to come in and be available for just to help care for the patient themselves. Outside contributions as far as financially that are helpful as far as arranging for other family members to be in the area to stay.
Music therapy. It's got music therapy, pet therapy, massage therapy.
Okay. All right. Let's go. Take two, right? All right. Regarding the Dr. Ellis Endowment Fund, when he had initially started this fund, the purpose for it was to help on the integrative side of medicine for the families of these unfortunate cancer patients that the insurance would not reimburse for, and this would include such as arranging for pet therapy, arranging for these dogs, cats, whatever to be available just for comfort measures for the patient, but also for the family. Music therapy, if you were to go into the cancer facility during a lot of these patients when they're having their infusion therapy, the music's going, they're all kind of just relaxing to the music, which makes that type of care more comfortable. It isn't very tense, and well, that's the intention of that. As far as other measures, massage therapy has been arranged as well for these patients and family members, and has been very therapeutic in the past as well. And like I stated, these services continue to grow because of the fact that with this vision that Dr. Ellis had, and the fortunate contributors such as Jimmy and others, that this continues to grow. And we're very blessed that we have this available in our network.